After overcoming infertility and a high-risk pregnancy, my twin daughters were finally born. Now that they are 1 year old, their constant crying at night leaves me with only 3 hours of sleep each day. I adore my daughters, but truthfully, I was reaching my physical and emotional limits. My husband, Harris, was so thrilled about the twins' birth, but lately, his attitude toward me had grown increasingly distant. He leaves for work early in the morning and comes home late at night, leaving us no time to connect on weekdays. On weekends, he plays joyfully with our daughters, but whenever I try to talk to him, all I get are cold, curt replies. While his love for our daughters seemed intact, I couldn't help but feel like his feelings for me had faded. Even if he would just listen and show little empathy, it would make such a difference. With no one to turn to for help, I struggled alone to keep up with the demands of childcare and housework. Before I knew it, my weight had dropped from 105 pounds to just 85 pounds. When I finally reached my breaking point, I asked my mom, Tamara, to come help me out. One day, while Harris was away on a business trip, a letter from him arrived in the mail. Allison, Harris sent something, but what could it be? Tamara, suspicious about a letter arriving from his business trip, insisted on opening it on the spot. Inside was divorce papers. Wait, divorce papers, Tamara said, visibly shocked. But surprisingly, I remained calm. I'm filing this immediately, I declared, as the evening rolled around. My name is Allison Mitchell, 32 years old. I met my husband, Harris, who is 2 years younger than me, at work several years ago. I was in my 3rd year at the company, and Harris had joined as a fresh graduate. Since we were assigned to different departments, we barely had any interaction for the first few months. One day, I saw Harris sitting dejectedly in the break room after being harshly reprimanded by a senior colleague. His back looked so lonely that I couldn't help but approach him. I still remember offering him a drink and some words of encouragement, along with helping him finish some of his tasks. That small act of kindness became the start of our conversations. As we got to know each other, we started going out for drinks under the pretense of celebrating small wins at work. Gradually, we grew closer, and before long, we began dating. After 2 years of dating, when I was 26, Harris proposed to me, and we got married. I wanted to keep working even after marriage. At the time, few of my friends were married, so having kids wasn't something I was thinking about immediately. Harris respected my thoughts, and we agreed to wait. We spent many evenings together, enjoying the finger foods Harris would prepare while sipping on good wine, chatting and venting about work. 2 years later, when I turned 28, my best friend and coworker Michaela gave birth. That event planted a seed in my heart, and I began to feel ready for children of my own. I discussed it with Harris, and we decided to start trying for a baby. Deep down, we both assumed that we were still young, and it would happen quickly. However, contrary to our expectations, we couldn't conceive, and time just kept slipping by. Meanwhile, friends who had married around the same time as us were having children one after another, and I began to feel increasingly isolated. Fertility struggles are such a sensitive topic. I couldn't easily confide in anyone, and I started to wonder if it was time to see a doctor. It was around this time that something unexpected happened. Nice to meet you. I'm Natasha Martin. I previously worked as a receptionist at an OB/GYN clinic. I look forward to working with you. That was how Natasha, a new junior colleague, introduced herself when she joined our company. She had strikingly large, beautiful eyes and a charmingly friendly smile. Allison, you're close in age to Natasha. Could you take on the role of her mentor? my boss asked. I had been the youngest in our department for a long time, so I was excited to finally have a direct junior colleague to guide. But Natasha wasn't particularly quick to pick things up. Even after explaining things, she struggled to understand, often asking the same questions repeatedly. There were many moments when I found myself stifling sighs as I explained the same thing over and over. Still, it was clear she was trying her best, and her earnest efforts didn't go unnoticed. I know I'm still not very good at this. Thank you for always helping me. I'll do my best to learn quickly and become as capable as you, Mrs. Mitchell. She was aware of her struggles but remained determined to improve, and her dedication made her endearing to me. Over time, we began chatting during breaks and after work, sharing everything from restaurant recommendations and weekend movies to past romantic experiences. Before I knew it, we were calling each other by our first names and even hanging out on weekends to go shopping. I adored Natasha as a junior colleague, and she seemed to look up to me fondly. One day during lunch, the topic naturally shifted from the wave of weddings happening around us to having children. For the first time, I decided to share something I hadn't told anyone else. To be honest, I've been married for nearly 4 years, but I haven't been able to have children yet, and it's really weighing on me. Perhaps because Natasha had previously worked at an OB/GYN clinic, I found it easy to talk to her about this. I've been thinking it might be time to see a doctor, but I've never been to an OB/GYN before, and honestly, it feels a little scary. Do women my age visit clinics like this often? Natasha listened attentively and offered sincere advice. At your age, there's no problem at all. But when it comes to fertility treatment, both partners have to go through various tests. The truth is, many husbands are reluctant, and that often becomes a roadblock. What? I didn't know that. I thought just going to the doctor would solve everything. I realized how little I knew about the process. According to Natasha, many men are resistant to fertility treatments, even if they accompany their wives to the clinic. They often refuse their own tests, which leads to tension and conflicts between couples, since treatments can be costly and time-consuming. How about I speak with Mr. Mitchell and explain the situation? If needed, I can help persuade him. Wait, really? You'd do that? The thought of visiting a clinic had always been daunting to me. There's the cost, the long waiting times, and the possibility of needing to make sudden appointments. I had also heard that the examination table could be intimidating, which made me put off going to the OB/GYN for as long as possible. Finally, making the decision to visit a clinic was hard enough, and the idea of having to convince Harris on top of that made it feel even more overwhelming. This time, Natasha offered to handle explaining and persuading Harris about the situation. Grateful to have such an amazing junior colleague, I immediately agreed. However, given the sensitive nature of the topic, Natasha said she preferred not to discuss it in places like a cafe where others might overhear. That made sense to me, so I decided to invite Natasha to her home the following Saturday. On the promised day, the intercom buzzed right on time. When I checked the monitor, there was Natasha standing with her bright smile to ease Harris into the situation. I had told him only that one of my friendly junior colleagues was coming over to visit, without mentioning anything about the conversation she planned to have with him. Coming. 1 second, I said as I opened a door. Thank you for having me, Natasha said as she stepped inside. I welcomed her in alongside Harris and introduced them at the doorway. This is Natasha, my junior colleague from the same department. Isn't she cute? And this is my husband, Harris. You're the same age as her. For a brief moment, Harris widened his eyes, as if startled. and then froze with his mouth slightly agape, seemingly at a loss for words. I wondered if he was amazed by Natasha's beauty. To be honest, I felt a tiny pang of jealousy. But at the same time, I hoped that my beloved Harris and Natasha could become friends. Natasha had been telling me about someone she liked, and it seemed things were about to work out for her. If Natasha got married someday, it would be wonderful if we could enjoy a close family friendship. At first, the three of us casually chatted over coffee about work and other light topics. Natasha had previously mentioned that it might be better for me not to be around during the main discussion, so at an appropriate moment, I excused myself and went to the kitchen. From where I stood in the kitchen, I couldn't see Harris's expression since his back was turned, but I could see Natasha's cheerful and adorable smile. I felt incredibly grateful for her willingness to help with something so personal. At one point, I noticed the kitchen towel was missing, so I left the living room to fetch one from the bathroom. As I reached the bathroom, I bumped into Harris, who had just come out of the restroom and was heading toward the bathroom as well. "Oh, are you done talking?" I asked. "Yay, she's leaving now," he replied tersely. Harris seemed a little annoyed, probably because I had left him alone with a junior colleague he'd just met to discuss such a sensitive topic. "Got it. I'll go see her off," I said. I went to the living room and walked Natasha to the door. Lowering my voice so Harris wouldn't overhear, I asked, "How did it go? What did Harris seem like?" "It went perfectly. Props to your husband for taking it so well," Natasha replied with a confident smile. Relieved, I thanked her, saying, "I'll definitely treat you to something as a thank you soon." Before seeing her off, this felt like a step forward in our journey. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Sometime later, "Harris, I'm pregnant. Look, there are 2 lines on the test." I had been feeling lethargic and fatigued, so on a whim, I decided to use a pregnancy test. When I cautiously looked at the result, there it was, 2 unmistakable lines. 2 lines, something I had been longing to see. How many single-line tests had I seen over the years? Overwhelmed with joy, Harris and I hugged each other tightly. 2 weeks later, when we went to the obstetrician, we received even more shocking news. "You're pregnant." "Oh, it looks like twins." Twins. Not prepared for such an announcement, I couldn't help but shout. A mix of surprise and happiness filled my heart to the brim. Even as we sat in the waiting room, trying to process the news, I couldn't stop smiling. We hurried home with a spring in our steps to share the update. When I told Harris about the twins, he froze for a moment, as if time itself had stopped. But slowly, his expression shifted from shock to sheer joy. We were over the moon that 2 precious lives had chosen to join our family. Twin pregnancies often lack a true safe period, as complications are more common. Although I had informed my boss early on, I was unsure about when to tell the rest of the workplace. Since checkups were scheduled every 2 weeks, I would need to take frequent time off, and I couldn't help but wonder how long I'd be able to continue working. Eventually, I decided to share the news with the entire office a little earlier than the typical 4-month mark. Fortunately, my colleagues were incredibly supportive. They arranged for me to handle mostly seated tasks and helped with lifting anything heavy. "Allison, congratulations. I'm so happy for you." Natasha beamed with joy when I shared the news with her, as though it was her own. "Allison, make sure you don't overdo it. During your maternity leave, Natasha will take over your work. Since you're always working together, it should be an easier transition," said my boss. Following his instructions, I started the handover process earlier than usual. "I'll make sure everything is as organized as possible before passing it to you," I assured Natasha. "Thank you so much." Oh, but about that document revision from the other day, I haven't finished it yet. I have to leave early today, and the deadline's tomorrow. What should I do? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it now. Go on. Have a good evening. I was deeply grateful to Natasha for the support she had given me during my fertility journey. Because of this, I tried to repay her kindness by taking on as much seated work as possible, including helping her whenever I could. Allison, are you sure you're okay? Is Natasha dumping her work on you? One of my coworkers asked, concerned. It seemed like some people saw it that way, but I didn't mind. The joy and gratitude I felt for being able to conceive far outweighed any minor inconveniences or extra effort on my part. But it seemed my body was reaching its limit. By the time I entered my 5th month of pregnancy, I started experiencing frequent abdominal tightness. At first, it would ease with a bit of rest, and my belly would return to its soft, normal state. However, as time went on, the tightness became more frequent. You're experiencing a threatened miscarriage, the doctor informed me during a checkup. It was then that I realized how abnormal this condition was. Threatened miscarriage. Maybe you shouldn't keep working, Michaela suggested. You should stop working now. The only way to manage a threatened miscarriage is complete rest. Harris urged, nodding in agreement. As we talked, I learned that my friend, Michaela, had experienced the same situation before. Her case had ended in heartbreak. She had lost her baby. Hearing about her past squeezed my heart with sorrow. I let out a deep breath. That's right. What I needed to focus on wasn't work, but protecting these babies. The next day, I went to the office with a doctor's note in hand. And so I would like to take a leave starting tomorrow. I deeply apologize for any inconvenience caused. Don't worry about it, my boss said cheerfully. Martin will take care of the remaining work. Just focus on yourself and your babies. Take all the time you need to rest. His words eased a tension in my shoulders. What followed were days of quiet prayer. Every moment was spent hoping and praying that the 2 lives growing inside me would make it into this world safely. As the days passed, my body grew heavier. Even turning over in bed became a challenge, and sometimes I found myself out of breath. But Harris was my rock. One night, I woke up to find Harris gently placing his hand on my belly. Hey there, it's Dad. Make sure to come out safely. Okay, he whispered softly. Hearing his words, I closed my eyes with a smile. He was becoming a father in his own way, too. Even while on bed rest, there were still things I could do. Choosing baby supplies, washing tiny clothes, each small preparation was filled with hope and anticipation. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. Lying on the operating table, I prayed over and over again. As I stared at the sterile glow of the fluorescent lights above, a moment of warmth seemed to envelop the room. And then, the sound of tiny cries filled the delivery room. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. They've been born. Both of them cried out loud, announcing their arrival into this world. Allison, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm the luckiest man alive. As I gazed into Harris's tearful eyes, my heart filled with warmth. Our 2 tiny, yet strong, daughters lay before us. Looking at them, a realization hit me. I am now a mom. We named our twin daughters Luna and Stella. Raising twins would surely be a challenge, but for them, I felt I could do anything. Harris took 4 months of parental leave to help, and my mom, Tamara, came to support us right after I was discharged from the hospital. Even though the babies were born, my body had not recovered yet. It felt heavy, and even the smallest movement sent jolts of pain. Despite that, the unfamiliarity of childcare and the sleepless nights continued. During such days, one of my little joys was opening the many gifts sent by friends, relatives, and coworkers to celebrate the baby's birth. Tiny clothes, towels, bibs, adorable toys, heartfelt message cards. It was overwhelming to see just how many people were celebrating with us. They must have chosen each item with so much care. My heart swelled with gratitude as I thought about it. The gift from Natasha, where did I put it? It should have been around here. Natasha had been the first person I informed about the birth, and her gift had arrived before anyone else's. It came in a strikingly red box, which made it stand out even more in my memory, since it arrived right when we were discharged from the hospital. I hadn't had the chance to open it. I thought it was about time to do so, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Harris didn't seem to know where it was either. I felt anxious if I didn't thank her soon. It would seem rude, but with the chaos of raising twins, I didn't have the time or energy to calmly search for answers. When I brought it up to Harris, he offered to send a general thank you gift on our behalf, so I decided to leave it entirely to him. Raising twins was a whirlwind of changing diapers, preparing bottles, and dressing them. Everything was double, leaving no time to leisurely search for missing items. Thanks to Mom, who handled meals, laundry, and other household chores, Harris and I were able to focus solely on child care. As we busied ourselves with this new life, time flew by, and soon enough, my mom's stay with us came to an end. She returned to her home and job. Can we really manage taking care of both kids while doing all the household chores ourselves? That nagging question lingered in my mind. But there was no choice, we had to do it. From that point on, life became unimaginably intense, far surpassing what we had envisioned. During their newborn phase, Luna and Stella would fall asleep shortly after feeding, but after they turned 1 month old, things changed. They became harder to settle, and worse, they'd start waking each other up with their cries. I wondered if our anxiety was somehow being passed on to them. Please sleep. Just stay asleep. My desperate pleas went unheard, and the sleepless nights dragged on. We were woken up constantly, leaving us with barely any rest. My complexion was ghastly, and my hair was a mess. Did I always have bags this dark under my eyes? More than once, I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and be startled by my own appearance. Yet, Harris and I kept encouraging each other. Day by day, as we made it through, our bond as a family grew stronger. The relief I felt when the twins finally fell asleep was immeasurable. Watching their tiny chests rise and fall in unison brought a sense of peace, as if all the day's struggles melted away into their serene little faces. Amid those chaotic days, my birthday arrived. Harris's parental leave was coming to an end, and I thought, there's no time for a birthday this year. It can wait. Maybe next year. I'd almost given up on the idea, but Harris had other plans. That day, he went out briefly and returned with my favorite steak and a cake. Not only that, but he'd also prepared a handbag I'd been wanting for ages as a surprise gift. He placed the small cake on the table, its softly glowing candles casting a warm light across the living room. Allison, happy birthday. Look, even Luna and Stella are saying, happy birthday, Mom. I looked at our daughters, who were waving their tiny hands and staring up at us with curious eyes. The sight melted my heart, making the moment even more special. To think we'd celebrate like this, all 4 of us. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I couldn't finish my sentence. For years, it had just been the 2 of us celebrating my birthday. How many times had I dreamed of having a birthday with children at the table? Now I could feel how precious this moment was, and I savored the happiness of it all. Tonight, I'll handle all the nighttime feedings and diaper changes. You go sleep in another room and take it easy." Taking Harris up on his offer, I enjoyed my first restful sleep in months. Honestly, that might have been the best birthday gift of all. Just a few days later, Harris returned to work. At first, he came home almost exactly on time each day. I realized he was putting extra effort into finishing his work early so he could be home and make sure I wasn't overburdened. When I think about seeing Luna and Stella, I just can't wait to come home. Being at home makes me feel at peace. Harris was absolutely smitten with our daughters. Even though he must have been tired, he eagerly took on almost all the parenting tasks as soon as he got home. I found his devotion both heartwarming and deeply appreciated. But things began to change about a month after he returned to work. Harris started coming home later and later, leaving me to handle all the housework and child care by myself. Since we worked at the same company in different departments, I knew this wasn't the busy season. In fact, this was usually a relatively quiet period. Plus, our company had strict rules against overtime. When I worked there, almost no one stayed late every day, which only made his behavior seem more unusual. "Why are you getting home so late? It's not a busy time of year, is it? Did something happen?" "Nothing. Just because we work in the same company doesn't mean you know everything about my department." Harris's responses to me became increasingly curt and distant. Still, whenever he returned late at night, he'd quietly enter the nursery and gently stroke the girls as they slept. Peeking through half-closed eyes, I could see his face soften with a tender smile, full of love for them. Does he still love our daughters, but find himself fed up with me? When we did talk, it was only about the girls, just the bare minimum we needed to discuss. Even if I tried to steer the conversation toward other topics, he'd cut it short with the "I'm going to shower" or something similar. I started to wonder, are we only connected because of our daughters? I hoped that as the girls grew and we had more to talk about regarding their care and development, things between us would naturally improve. But his schedule didn't leave room for such opportunities. He left early in the morning, came home at midnight, and during the week, we barely saw each other. On his days off, he played joyfully with the girls, but when I tried to talk to him, his replies were cold and detached. Even when the twins turned 1, our relationship showed no signs of improving. I had no one to confide in, and felt like I was struggling alone, just focusing on the never-ending cycle of child care and housework. The girls' night waking had not eased, and I was surviving on only 3 hours of sleep each day. As much as I adored them, the exhaustion was taking a toll. If someone would just listen and show little empathy. My weight, which had been 105 pounds, had dropped to 85 pounds. I was starting to think, maybe I've reached my limit. Should I go back to my parents' house? It was around that time that I got a message from Michaela. "Allison, why don't you come over sometime? My son really wants to meet your twins." Taking 2 energetic toddlers out was daunting, but I was at my breaking point, desperate for someone to talk to. I decided to accept her invitation. Finally, the promised day arrived. "Welcome, what? Allison, you've lost so much weight. You look exhausted. Are you okay?" When I saw the concern on Michaela's face, I realized that my condition might be worse than I thought. "The kids are playing together, so you're fine. Today I'm all yours. Tell me everything." Her gentle words made me open up, and before I knew it, Michaela and I had been talking for hours. As we spoke, I could feel the heavy burden in my chest gradually lightening. "Allison, first you need to focus on getting your strength back. I'll help with what I can. But before you collapse, you should ask your mom for help. Don't you want Luna and Stella to come to you when they're struggling in the future?" She was right, but my mom, who worked as a nurse, and often had night shifts, had taken a month off after my delivery, and I felt guilty about asking her for help again. However, Michaela encouraged me to reach out, so as soon as I got home, I called Mom. "Hello, Mom. It's Allison. I need your help. I need you to come back." My mom acted quickly when she heard the urgency in my voice. The very next day, she spoke to her workplace and arranged a long-term leave starting the following month. No matter how old I was, my mom would always be my mom. I felt overwhelmed with emotion. The following month, when my mom came to help, Harris was away on a long business trip. I had told him that my mom would be coming, but perhaps he purposely scheduled the trip to avoid the tension. Although I felt a bit guilty, I no longer had the luxury of worrying about such things. Since my mom arrived, she was able to help with some of the housework and child care. I was able to rest a little more and felt like my appetite and energy were slowly returning. Then one day, I received an envelope from Harris, who was still on his business trip. "Allison, something from Harris has arrived." "What is this?" My mom was suspicious, since she couldn't understand why Harris would send mail from his trip, so she opened it right there. Inside was, wait, a divorce petition. My mom couldn't hide her shock, but I remained unusually calm. "I'll file it right away." "Wait, are you sure? This is going to cost $600K. Can you really raise 2 kids on your own after a divorce?" "I'll be fine. Can you please look after the kids for a bit?" I managed to reassure my mom, and I quietly moved to another room where the girls wouldn't hear me. I could hear them happily playing with my mom. It seemed like she could handle them for a while. With the divorce petition in hand, I made a phone call to Michaela. After a while, Michaela came to pick me up. "Well, let's go." Michaela looked a little nervous. Before long, Michaela and I arrived at a certain apartment. She led me to a door and rang the doorbell. "Hello," a familiar voice answered, and a person who appeared from inside was, "Wait, Allison." It was Natasha. She looked terribly flustered, her gaze darting around. It was no surprise. After all, standing behind us were 2 police officers. On the way to this apartment, I had actually gone to the police and had them accompany me. "Natasha Martin, you may be in violation of the anti-stalking law. Can we speak with you at the station?" The strong police officer said this, and Natasha seemed to give up, not resisting, and quietly going with them. As I watched Natasha being led away, I felt a sense of relief. "Allison." From inside the house, I heard the voice of my beloved, and I turned towards it. Then I was pulled strongly into an embrace, and my cheek met Harris's chest. Harris, holding me, had slightly trembling hands. "Harris, I'm so glad you're okay. I'm really relieved." I wrapped my arms around his back and slowly stroked him. My heart was filled with relief. The truth was, Harris had been stalked by Natasha for a long time. Harris and Natasha were classmates at the same university, in their first year of college, during a party for a club. It seemed that Harris and Natasha had spent the night together due to drunkenness. "Harris, do you remember what happened yesterday?" The next morning, Natasha showed Harris a photo of herself, in her underwear, lying in his arms while he was asleep. But in reality, Harris had just been drunk and sleeping, and they hadn't crossed any boundaries. This was Natasha's trap. However, actually, Harry's and I. Apparently, she had been hinting to her circle of friends about some kind of relationship with Harris. She went on to manipulate photos of herself with Harris, posting them on social media to make it seem like they were dating, and she even threatened other girls who were close to Harris, telling them to stay away from him. These abnormal behaviors continued throughout their time at university and didn't show any signs of stopping. Terrified by Natasha's actions, Harris moved to a different state for his job, and he never told anyone, not even his family, where he lived or worked. After that, for a few years, he lived without being found and seemed to enjoy a peaceful everyday life. However, after several years, Natasha managed to find Harris. Harris, so this is where you've been hiding. It took me quite some time to find you. When Natasha suddenly appeared on Harris's way home from work, Harris was terrified. But soon, Harris told her that he was already married. He thought that when Natasha heard he was married, she would give up. However, Natasha's obsession, which had lasted for over 5 years since their student days, couldn't be so easily dismissed by the mere fact of his marriage. I won't allow this. I'll make you break up, no matter what. Natasha, with her hair disheveled, threatened Harris, glaring at him. For a while, her stalking continued with silent phone calls and following him around. But that wasn't enough for Natasha. She even joined the same company and began approaching me, his wife. When I invited Natasha over to our house, she discovered where we lived, and Harris became even more anxious. Now I understood why Harris had been acting the way he did at that time. Harris, you seem to be having so much fun raising the kids with Allison every day. I heard you two argued a little, but you made up quickly. I'm jealous. That makes me want to do something to Allison, Luna, and Stella. At some point, Natasha's jealousy of our home life grew, and she started insinuating that she might harm me and the girls. At first, he thought it was me who had been contacting Natasha and telling her about our life at home. But there was no way I could know such detailed things, from trivial conversations to small arguments and even offhand comments. Natasha seemed to know it all. Harris began to grow suspicious of Natasha, and then, on my birthday, Harris told me to rest while he took care of the girls. After putting them to bed, he searched the house and found a bugging device. It seemed Natasha had placed it during a time when I was alone, after I had invited her over. Harris confronted Natasha about the bugging device, but Natasha responded, you found it. If you remove it, I won't forgive you. If I can't hear you, I'll just stand outside your house and watch you constantly. Allison might find out too. She threatened him, and Harris couldn't remove the device. Taking advantage of Harris's inability to resist, Natasha's demands escalated. Harris, stop being so close to Allison. Every time I hear about it, I feel like I'm going to snap. I'm listening to everything, and to prevent any harm coming to me, Harris started to act cold toward me. Harris thought about telling me everything, but he didn't want me to know about his shameful past, nor did he want to burden me with anything other than the kids. So he decided to bear everything on his own. Harris started working late into the night, spending time away from home, and reducing his contact with me. While doing this, he was desperately trying to figure out how to deal with Natasha without letting her get away with it. He couldn't consult anyone, and everyone seemed like an enemy, making him distrustful of people. Over time, he became frightened of every little noise, and whenever he looked out the window, he felt like someone was lurking outside. But there was one person who noticed Harris's strange behavior. It was Michaela. Despite being busy with parenting, Michaela had grown suspicious of Harris, who was working late every day and frequently walking in the opposite direction of his home. She decided to keep an eye on him for a while, thinking that every family had its own issues. But as Harris's condition worsened day by day, she couldn't resist reaching out to him. Harris, are you okay? Has something happened? At first, Harris hesitated, but realizing he had reached his breaking point, and knowing Michaela was Allison's close friend, he decided to tell her everything. About Natasha, Allison told me she was a sweet junior colleague But I didn't know this was happening. Actually, Natasha sent a baby gift, but there was a knife hidden inside. I got rid of it without Allison finding out, but this is beyond crazy. It's abnormal. Michaela was horrified when she heard the story, and immediately felt that not only Harris and myself, but my entire family, were in danger. Harris, we need to go to the police. But with this half-hearted evidence, they'll just issue a warning, and that would only put Allison and the others at more risk. A stalker who's been obsessing since university won't just stop with a warning. We need to gather proof that shows an imminent threat and get her arrested. Following Michaela's suggestion, she and Harris began collecting evidence. They gathered texts, videos of Natasha following Harris, recordings of harassing phone calls, and even kept a diary detailing all the incidents. However, gathering sufficient evidence took longer than expected. During this time, Natasha's threats did not subside. In fact, when she realized she couldn't get Harris, she went into a frenzy and eventually brought a knife to threaten me. Though Harris managed to stop her from carrying out the attack, he later confided in Michaela about an outrageous plan. I doesn't know what she'll do next. I'll pretend to be interested in her to buy time. If I can get into her house, I might find stronger evidence. So, under the pretense of a long business trip, Harris began staying in hotels and internet cafes while pretending to be more friendly toward Natasha. Natasha was overjoyed, thinking that Harris had finally started paying attention to her after avoiding her for so long. One day, Natasha invited Harris to her house. Inside the small studio apartment, a terrifying scene awaited him. The entire wall was covered with photos. Upon closer inspection, all the photos were of Harris, taken secretly at various locations from their university days to the present. But what caught his attention even more was a photo of me, placed in the corner of the room, where my face was violently scribbled over with a pen or slashed with a knife. The moment Harris saw that, he couldn't control his shaking, overwhelmed by intense disgust and fear. Seeing his reaction, Natasha smiled maniacally. Look, I love you this much, far more than Allison. Can you see how I feel? Yay. Harris, careful not to be noticed, took out his mobile phone and secretly photographed the evidence. He also occasionally hinted at the divorce papers, making Natasha think it was just a matter of time before they separated, and used that to deceive her. Sending the divorce papers to me was part of the plan. After about 2 months, they finally gathered enough evidence and went to the police. Upon seeing the evidence, the police officers immediately understood the severity of the situation and promised to take swift action. I first learned the truth about everything when I went to Michaela's house with the girls to visit. Michaela explained everything that was happening, the surveillance devices planted in our home, how this caused Harris to act distant, and how he had been pretending to be on a business trip while secretly gathering evidence. All the pieces of the puzzle seemed to fit together in my mind, one after another. While I was relieved that Harris had not actually started to dislike me, I was also overwhelmed by the guilt of not having noticed it sooner. How hard and frightening it must have been for him, carrying all of that alone. Imagining what Harris had gone through brought tears to my eyes. After the divorce papers arrived, we followed Michaela's plan, and now we had finally succeeded in having Natasha detained. Along with Natasha's arrest, the 3 of us went to the police station for questioning. Mrs. Mitchell, if you notice anything, no matter how small, please let us know. The female police officer sitting in front of me said this in a gentle tone, but I struggled to find the right words. I'm sorry, I really didn't know anything. I was so caught up in my own life, Michaela told me, and that's when I finally found out. As I said this, A wave of shame washed over me. Harris's once kind attitude had completely changed, but I hadn't tried to understand the real reason behind it. I had been too focused on myself. I felt anger at myself for thinking only of my own concerns. It's quite common for someone like Mr. Mitchell to keep everything to themselves, trying not to let anyone notice. Victims often think they can just endure it. The officer's words gave me a little comfort, though a bitter feeling still lingered. I'm sure Mr. Mitchell didn't want to worry you or the girls, the people we care about most. We want to protect them, she said gently, choosing her words carefully. As we left the police station, the cold wind on my cheeks finally brought me back to reality. On the way back, Michaela drove us home. You too. I'm so glad you guys are safe. Michaela, thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened to me, Harris, or the girls. You're truly a lifesaver. If Michaela hadn't reached out to me back then, who knows what could have happened. It might have been too late to fix things. I can't thank you enough. I'm forever grateful. We both bowed deeply in appreciation. Don't mention it. We're best friends, right? Next time, treat me to a nice lunch. And make sure you two stay happy together from now on. With a smile, Michaela got into the car and drove off. By now, it was completely dark. As I opened the front door, I could see the girls stumbling toward us with unsteady steps. We hugged them tightly. Allison, Harris, what happened to you two? My mom emerged from behind, looking worried. Tamara, actually. Harris and I told Mom everything. She listened quietly, surprised, as we explained everything that had happened. I truly put Allison through so much trouble and distress. I made her worry and become so exhausted. I'm really sorry. From now on, I'll make sure to make Allison, Luna, and Stella happy. Harris bowed deeply to my mom and I. Thanks to the evidence, Natasha was charged not only under the stalking prevention law, but also with criminal threats. It wasn't long after that we heard the news of her dismissal from her job. The people in her department were reportedly shocked. In court, Natasha was fined 500,000 yen for stalking behavior, and a restraining order was placed against her regarding Harris. When we received this report from the police, we were relieved, but at the same time, an uneasy thought crossed my mind. Would Natasha really obey the restraining order? However, when I asked Michaela, she told me that Natasha's parents were furious and had taken her to the countryside. Natasha was reportedly in a daze, as if her soul had left her body. When I heard that, the tension I had carried for so long finally dissolved, and I breathed a sigh of relief. It's over, isn't it? Yeah, it's finally over. I'm sorry for everything, Harris said with a remorseful look on his face. I'm the one who should apologize for not noticing. You were the one suffering all this time. I'm really sorry. Let's stop apologizing to each other. From now on, we can live in peace. With that, Harris gently hugged me. Afterward, Harris became more active in doing household chores and caring for the children than I was, especially with the girls. There seemed to be something special in the way he interacted with them. He always gave his all to spend time with them and made them laugh together. It felt like he was trying to make up for the time we had lost, cherishing every single day. One night, after the girls had gone to sleep, we were drinking coffee together. To think that we'd have a normal daily life again. As I savored the joy of it, Harris suddenly spoke shyly. I'm really glad I married you, Allison. Thank you so much. Let's keep supporting each other from now on. Those words filled my heart with warmth. By sharing the household chores and child rearing, I slowly began to regain my energy and get back into the rhythm of daily life. The weight I had lost was starting to return to normal as well. Then, when the girls were a year and a half old, I decided to return to work. My colleagues in the same department welcomed me back with cheers of "We've been waiting for you," and welcome back, although I often had to leave or take sudden days off due to the girls' health issues. My understanding workplace made it possible for me to manage. "Let's go to the beach this Saturday." Sounds great. Luna and Stella need to wear their swimsuits. Our home was once again filled with the same smiles as before, with my beloved husband, Harris, and our two daughters, Luna and Stella, surrounded by my treasures. I savored the happiness of being able to laugh and spend each day together. "You don't even know that, you stupid wife!" Mary, my mother-in-law, always calls me a stupid wife. I'm a freelance programmer who works from home, so I'm usually at the house. But Mary constantly summons me at her own convenience. Chores at Mary's house, weeding the garden, shopping, carrying bags, being her personal chauffeur. None of these tasks are urgent. It seems she just wants to order me around as she pleases. When we visited her house to announce our engagement, she and my father-in-law John welcomed us so warmly. I thought I wanted to become closer with them, so I decided to live near her place. I never imagined it would turn out like this. Being called by Mary 3 times a week is hindering my work. This could damage my reputation as a freelance programmer. So, after discussing it with my husband Ethan, I got him to agree that after driving her for shopping one last time, I wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. If I can just endure this one last time, I'll be free from this hardship. That's the only reason I've been doing everything she tells me to, but... Oh, ouch! Ouch! When I arrived at Mary's house after finishing the shopping, I found her sitting on the ground next to the car. She keeps saying ouch, with no indication of standing up. It seems like she's injured herself somehow. Hey, stupid wife! Call an ambulance! Even in this situation, it disgusts me how she calls me stupid wife. No matter what, this woman only knows how to curse at me with foul language. If she's going to say that much, should I really act like a stupid wife then? An ambulance, right? Got it. I'm Emma, 30 years old. Currently, I'm a freelance programmer working from home. I got married this year and live together with my husband Ethan, who's 4 years older than me. Originally, Ethan and I worked at the same company. He was my senior colleague in charge of training me when I joined as a fresh graduate. I thought he was a kind and reliable senior who patiently taught this clueless newbie how to do the job. But at first, I was so focused on learning and managing the work that I didn't think of him as anything more than that. Once I became capable enough to handle some responsibilities, I got the chance to work on a project together with Ethan as part of the same team. As we spent time together racing toward the same goal, I started to strongly sense his kindness and sincerity. At the party celebrating the completion of that project, the distance between me and him rapidly closed. After dating for about 2 years after that, we got married, which brings us to today. When I got married, I quit my company job and became a freelancer. That said, I still get work from my previous company, and I've maintained good relationships with the clients I've dealt with so far, so I've been steadily taking on projects. After getting married, Ethan and I rented an apartment near his parents' home. My own family lives about a 4-hour drive away, so it's not easy to visit them casually. But Ethan's parents' place is close to where we originally lived. When we visited them before the wedding to introduce ourselves, they treated us so well. I had hoped to become even closer with such kind parents, which is why I decided to live nearby. Plus, in talking with John, I discovered we had some unexpected things in common. It turned out that John knew the person in charge at one of my work clients. I love comedy, and it just so happens that John is a fan of the same comedy duo. John holds a high position at the company he works for, but he always interacts with me in a warm, friendly way. There are ways he resembles Ethan, which makes it easy for me to talk with him. Our conversations often get lively. At times like that, I get the feeling that Mary is giving me a sharp look, but no, I must be imagining it. I do intend to maintain a certain level of discretion in our relationship. Or so I thought. But lately Mary has started contacting me a lot. She asks me to do things like pull weeds in the garden, or go to some supermarket that's having a sale on eggs and bring some to her house too. Mary probably thinks that since I'm at home, I have too much time on my hands. I explained that I work from home, but Mary has always stuck to the old ways of doing things and seems to have trouble grasping the concept of remote work in this day and age. She often says, "You're at home all day, aren't you?" Even though I'm at home, I set work hours just like when I was employed at a company, and during that time I focus intently on getting my work done. If I'm in danger of missing a deadline, I have to work at night too, just like overtime. When multiple projects pile up, it gets hectic. So it's a real problem when she suddenly says things like, "Come pick up some vegetables at my place right now." I've explained many times that I'm working the same as if I were going to an office, and I've declined. But it's as if she's not even listening to what I say. She keeps saying the same things every time, and the frequency of her calls is only increasing. Maybe she's getting desperate because I'm not doing what she tells me to. But I want to do my job properly too. As a freelancer, that's what my reputation hinges on. However, Mary wasn't about to give up so easily. When I refused, she started barging into my home with her tea-drinking friends from the neighborhood in tow. "You never come over, so I brought these to you. Look, I brought all these vegetables. They're wilting a bit since you never come to get them, but you can still eat them, right?" Saying this, she dumps a huge pile of half-rotten vegetables at the entrance and lingers there chatting endlessly with the others. "You say you have work, but isn't taking care of the house also a daughter-in-law's job?" Young people these days just don't understand the importance of maintaining relationships. Not cherishing your mother-in-law is no different from being an ungrateful child. Is this what harassment by a mother-in-law looks like? My, how frightening. Even if you say you're busy, surely you can spare some time to show your face? What's the point of living so close if you don't even visit? Humph. She must look down on us. Young people these days are so difficult. 4 or 5 neighborhood ladies stand at the entrance of my home with the door wide open, incessantly screeching like this. I don't know what kind of story Mary told her friends, but having my time wasted like this and being spoken ill of so one-sidedly is more than I can bear. If I had to summarize what these ladies are saying, it basically amounts to do as what she says. In other words, if I don't obey her, this scene will keep repeating itself in the future. I guess I have no choice if I want to avoid trouble. Any work I can't finish, I'll just have to take care of late at night. Steeling myself, I decided to go along with Mary's errands to a certain extent. However, I soon came to regret that decision, realizing it may have been a mistake. Being suddenly summoned with a "Come over to my house" became the norm. She would show up at my place saying, "I made some side dishes for you," then open my fridge without permission, noisily look around my house, and complain, "Make sure to clean properly, it's filthy." I would also get called over to Mary's house and be made to pull weeds in the garden, do dishes, and clean her home. Furthermore, since Mary doesn't have a driver's license, she would constantly call me to bring the car and use me as her personal taxi. The destinations varied, from nearby supermarkets to distant shopping malls. Mary would get in the car and simply state the destination. Of course, there were times it was somewhere I didn't know or had never been before. I would ask where it was located or which direction to head in, but, "You don't even know that, you stupid wife!" She would just hurl insults like that without actually telling me. Left with no other option, I would look it up myself or input it into the car's GPS. When we went shopping like this, she would always buy massive amounts, and I would be ordered to carry her bags. John probably earns a lot, and with just the two of them, they can likely afford to shop that much. But there are plenty of rather expensive pieces of jewelry and things that make me wonder, do you really need that? I think she probably intends to show off to me too. If you don't have proper things like these, it's clear you have no class. A stupid wife like you wouldn't understand. She says stuff like that to me all the time. Even though she drags me along to shop with her every single time, she's never once said thank you or given me anything. It's not that I want things like that from her, not at all. I just think it's simply harassment towards me, nothing more. I want to quit this role that has no meaning and is only a loss for me, but I'm sure if I refuse, that gang of neighborhood ladies will come barging in again. I was struggling to figure out what to do when Ethan, who had just come home from work, said this to me while we were having dinner together. "Emma, you've been working a lot lately on weekends and at night too, right? Are you swamped with projects or something?" "It's because your mom has been ordering me around 3 times a week on weekdays." Huh? I couldn't take it anymore. I must have been tired too. I got irritated, wondering who he thought was to blame. For a while now, she's been telling me to do things like clean the yard and come pick vegetables, you know. Wait, you mean my mom has been telling you to do that? Yeah. Even when I say I can't go because I have work, she won't listen. She brings her lady friends over to our house and they complain loudly, saying things like it's a harassment. Every single time, she jerks me around saying bring the car now, and even makes me carry her bags. I can't get any work done during the day. I told him all about Mary's misdeeds, but Ethan had a doubtful expression. Well, that might be understandable. Because in front of John and Ethan, Mary is the very picture of a good wife, wise mother. Just like the ideal image of a wife from the old days, she devotes herself to her husband, holds back, and follows 3 steps behind. That said, it's not like John is some extremely henpecked husband, and since Ethan lived alone for quite a while, he doesn't mind doing housework either. But when Mary is around, she says the men should just sit and does everything herself. By the way, in front of John and Ethan, she calls me Emma, not stupid wife. When it's just the two of us, I'm stupid wife. When the men are watching, she doesn't make me do anything and even puts on airs of looking after me, which I think is amazing. I've never seen someone who can switch between 2 faces so cleanly like that. For that reason, to Ethan, Mary is the perfect mother, always kind and considerate of her family. I thought so too at first, which is why I agreed to live near Mary's house like this. But the reality was different. My mother-in-law had an unbelievably dark side. Still, for Ethan, it probably doesn't feel good to hear his own parent bad-mouthed. And more than anything, Ethan seems to like his mother, so I thought it would be better for me not to say anything, but I want Ethan to understand soon too. Mom did all those things. You don't believe it? No, it's not that I don't believe it, but do you think I'm lying? I don't think you lie. Thank goodness. If Ethan had called me a liar here, it would have been grounds for immediate divorce. Hey, can you tell her to stop? Getting called out on weekdays is really tough for me. Huh, you want me to tell my mom that? Yeah. If I say it, she'll just say shut up, stupid wife, and that'll be the end of it. He still has an expression like he can't 100% believe what I'm saying. But he should understand that doubting me in this situation is the real problem. Okay. I'll call her now then. Yes. Please. Maybe Ethan thought that by calling in front of me, if I were lying, I might get flustered. But there's not a single lie in my words, so there's no damage done. Rather, if Mary will quiet down after being scolded by her beloved son, I can easily forgive a small suspicion like that by pretending not to notice. Ethan takes out his smartphone, swiftly operates it with his fingertips, and puts the smartphone to his ear. Oh, hi Mom. Yeah, I'm eating now. Pork sauté today, and no, I wanted to ask you something. I can picture Mary getting all excited over a call from her son. Is it true that you're calling Emma 3 times a week and making her do errands? I'm a bit disappointed that he's phrasing the question like that. He's making it seem like he's only asking because I said so. Well, it's actually true, so whatever. I'm sure Mary will say something like, it just ended up that way, or Emma is so kind that I can't help relying on her. Silly me. Emma has work too, so it's a problem for her to be called out like that. No, she's at home, but she says it's the same as working at a company. I sigh, realizing he just doesn't get it after all. Mary probably wants to say that I should quit my job, hurry up and have kids, and take care of the house. Just like she did. And I think she also wants to loudly declare that I should listen to what she says. I get that it's inconvenient without a car. Maybe Dad can take you on weekends or... Yeah, that's his time off, but you know, Emma isn't on break on weekdays, she's working. Yes, that's it. Go Ethan. Secure my proper work hours for me. It's not okay even if it's just sometimes, but... Wait a sec. Saying that, Ethan takes the smartphone away from his ear and looks at me. Mom says she wants you to take her to the shopping mall just for tomorrow. But I have a job due for delivery the day after tomorrow. Does she think I can just block off my schedule ahead of time? And what about Ethan, relaying that to me without changing anything? I can hear Mary's shrill voice talking non-stop from the smartphone Ethan is holding. Mary always uses this fawning tone when talking to Ethan and John. But when she orders me around, she uses a much lower and more curt way of speaking. She said just for a little while in the afternoon. And? I know it's really a bother for you, Emma, but could you please do it just for tomorrow? For a moment, the word divorce flashed through my head. I've heard that dealing with the in-laws is often a cause for divorce. I thought about it as if it were someone else's problem. Then you won't have to listen to Mom's requests anymore. You heard that, right, Mom? Make this the last time. Ethan puts the smartphone back to his ear and speaks to Mary. Even though she has work tomorrow too, she's specially making time for this. You get that you need to be grateful to her, Mom? As I half listen to Ethan talking, I start to feel fed up. In the end, Ethan prioritizes Mary and demands that I work for Mary's sake. It's disappointing. But thinking realistically, if after tomorrow I never have to follow Mary's orders again, that's a big benefit for me. From now on, I can just ignore whatever she says. And even if she tries to force things, I can just toss it all to Ethan to deal with. In the first place, if I got divorced, I'd be cutting ties with Mary too, I suppose. Sorry for deciding on my own, but it didn't seem like the discussion would wrap up unless I made it a trade-off. Ethan, apparently finished with the call, places his smartphone on the table and says this. I'm really sorry. Mom doesn't know much about the ways of the world, and she tends to assume she's always right, so she can be pushy. So I should just do as she says? No, that's not it. Unless we make it so we each get one demand met, we won't find a compromise. I've been compromising and pushing myself all this time. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I understand that Ethan probably couldn't really believe Mary was in the wrong either, but he trusted what I said and talked to Mary for me. I also get that using a trade-off to settle the negotiation can be effective. Still, it feels unreasonable. The feeling that I can't accept it is strong, and I don't feel like saying thank you for resolving this to him. So, what time tomorrow? Oh, around 4, she said. I'll go because I don't want to be accused of breaking a promise, but this really has to be the last time. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Just looking at Ethan's relieved face irritates me. Why do I have to feel this way? I didn't get married to feel like this. Rather, if I hadn't gotten married, I wouldn't have to feel this way. My thoughts started to spiral out of control, so I consciously stopped thinking about it for a moment. I can think more about the future after I get through tomorrow. I don't want to, but for now, let's just try to overcome tomorrow. As Mary requested, I went to pick her up at 4 p.m. She made me wait about 30 minutes, saying I'm not ready yet. When she finally got in the car, she started mumbling incessantly. Tattling to Ethan, how cowardly! Not even listening to a family request. What an undutiful daughter-in-law. Just staying at home all day, and you exaggerate about being busy. Abandoning someone in need, you fiend. I'm so unlucky to have such a stupid wife. It went on like this the whole time, but if I can just get through today, I'll be free. Since Ethan talked to her, she should know I'm dissatisfied. I don't need to smile at her, so I ignore all of Mary's remarks. After arriving at the mall, I had to carry her bags as usual. But when I decided not to reply to everything, I felt a bit more at ease than usual. Maybe out of spite, Mary was buying even heavier, larger, and more expensive things than ever. But we finally finished shopping, loaded the bags into the car, and started heading back. Once I drop off the bags and Mary at her house, it'll really be over. Even on the way back, Mary was babbling on about something, but it's not even reaching my ears anymore. I just want it to end quickly. That's all I can think about. When we finally arrived at Mary's long-awaited house, I immediately got out of the car and headed for the trunk. Can you hurry up and unlock the front door? Otherwise, I'll leave it right in front of the door, I said curtly as I got out. Mary was fussing about something, but she probably thought it would be a problem to have the bags left in front of the door. She obediently opened the rear sliding door and got out, or so I thought. Ow! It hurts! A loud sound and Mary's voice. Wondering what happened, I looked from the back of the car towards the rear sliding door. Mary was sitting on the ground. Ow! 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 I walked over to see what was going on. The open rear door, Mary sitting on the ground, and the scattered contents of her bags next to her. Did you fall while getting out? This car! The door! It caught my foot! My bone is broken! Probably out of frustration. Mary is screaming hysterically. However, this automatic sliding door has a pinch prevention function. If it senses an obstacle while opening or closing, the door moves in the opposite direction. Currently, the door is open, so she probably just fell out of the car, or closed the door too quickly while getting out and nearly got pinched. She's screaming while sitting, so she may have actually hurt something. But in the end, isn't it her own carelessness? It hurts! Hey, stupid wife! Ambulance! I'm really fed up with Mary, who hurls insults even in this situation. every single time she calls me a stupid wife. If she says it that much, should I really become a stupid wife? An ambulance, right? Ambulance! Are you deaf, stupid wife? Wee-oo. Huh? Wee-oo. I decided to fully play the role of stupid wife. She only said ambulance. She didn't say call an ambulance. So I just kept imitating the sound of an ambulance. Hey! Wee-oo. Shut up! Enough already! Mary reached for her smartphone that had rolled out of her bag and called the fire department herself to request an ambulance. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, I kept generously imitating the sound of an ambulance for her. It was a bit amusing to see Mary looking at me like I was some incomprehensible creature. After a few minutes, the ambulance arrived. Mary still couldn't move. The paramedics examined her, immobilized her right ankle, and carried her into the ambulance. Should I ride along too? Of course I don't need an idiot like you. Mary was still screaming, and the paramedics were trying to calm her down. I had no intention of riding along anyway. Are you family? One of the crew members addressed me. It seemed they had decided which hospital to take her to. That person's name is Mary. I'll go to the hospital by my car. Understood. Then please go to this hospital. The name of the hospital was written on the memo I was handed. It was a general hospital about a 20-minute drive from here. After seeing off the ambulance like this, I decided to contact John and Ethan before leaving. They both just finished work, so they said they would head directly to the hospital now. It was close to the company where John works, and for Ethan, he could get off at the station on his way home from work and be there right away. I guess we'll talk when everyone's here. I muttered to myself and got into the car. When I arrived at the hospital and entered the treatment room where the staff directed me, Mary with her right ankle firmly immobilized, John, and Ethan were all there. How horrible! You pinned my leg with the door! As soon as she saw my face, Mary, sitting on the treatment bed with her leg stretched out, started screaming. But with John and Ethan there, her vigor was less than half the usual. Excuse me? It's broken! Take responsibility! I had predicted it would come to this, but I never thought she would bring it up even in front of John and Ethan. Does she seriously believe the claim that I caused Mary's injury will hold up? I looked over at Ethan, and after a big sigh, he opened his mouth. She says it's fractured. Apparently, she twisted her ankle with all her weight on it. My leg got caught in the door. That woman did it. It's your fault I have a fracture. Mom, you got hurt because you twisted your own ankle, right? As Ethan is speaking, his mother butts in, screaming hysterically. If she twisted it, that must mean she failed at getting out of the car and fell, just as I thought. Mary, why are you trying to blame me? It's because you're harassing me. Even if you fell on your own, to say it's harassment from me. Shut up, stupid wife. It's your fault. You're the one to blame. It seems when I'm involved, Mary's true nature comes out. Even though John and Ethan are here, her hidden face is showing. Enough already! John yelled at his wife, who kept screaming. There's no need for Emma to do something like that. Rather, weren't you the one harassing your daughter-in-law? That's not true, dear. That girl, even though she's the daughter-in-law, she never listens to what I say. You, be quiet. Emma, could you tell us what the situation was? It seems John didn't believe his wife's story from the beginning. In that case, perfect. Let's make sure they know everything. Understood. Then, shall we go to the parking lot? I'll explain using the actual car. We asked the nurse in the treatment room to look after Mary, and the three of us headed to the parking lot together. When I saw Mary sitting on the ground, the rear door was open. So either she failed at getting out of the car, or she closed the door too quickly and panicked when it made contact. In any case, she probably didn't stick the landing. I actually opened the rear sliding door of the car to show them. When the door makes contact while closing, it opens back up again like this. It's a safety device installed on automatic sliding doors. I touch the closing sliding door as if pinching my arm in it, and the door's motion stops once, then starts opening again. That's right. If it were an old manual sliding door, that would be one thing, but for it to automatically pinch. She must have fallen while getting out of the car. It's her ankle that's injured, after all. Ethan also says in exasperation. From the looks of it, she was really ordering you around, huh, Emma? Sorry for asking you again today. I have a lot I want to say to Ethan, who's apologizing reservedly, but for now, revealing everything takes priority. If you look at these numerous messages, you'll understand. Far from harassment from me, I was being called so much it was interfering with my work. I opened the message screen from Mary on my smartphone. I slowly swipe through, going back through the old messages so John and Ethan, who are peering at my phone, can see. Written there are a slew of abusive words like bring the car, go by that, clean the yard, and stupid wife. What this much? For John, it may have been an unexpected, sudden event. He mutters in a dazed manner. Ethan too says nothing with a surprised expression, perhaps because it's his first time seeing it with his own eyes. By the way, I carried her purchases again today, but I didn't have time to unload them from the car, so the things she bought are here. I open the trunk to show the load inside. It's crammed full of bags. Today, there were a lot of particularly large items, and she had bought brand name goods and jewelry. Got it. Let's head back. John, who had carefully checked the bags, turns back after saying just that. Ethan and I also follow and return to the treatment room where we were before. Where did you get the money to shop that much? As soon as he enters the room, John interrogates Mary. Mary is cowed by his serious expression. A credit card. A card? You used the family card I gave you? Well, there was an ad about a card you can use to withdraw money. I wondered what they were talking about at first, but when I heard ad and card to withdraw money, it clicked. Her father seemed to have realized the same thing. Don't tell me, you borrowed from a card loan. It said I could pay it back little by little. How much did you borrow? No, wait, why would you even? It's probably a considerable sum, I think. Every shopping trip, she was enjoying shopping quite lavishly. I thought John must be making a lot for her to do that, but to think this is what it was. But... Mary stammers in a frightened manner. It was a power move against me, wasn't it? I'm sure Mary herself wasn't thinking about it logically enough to explain it herself. In that case, let me explain it for her. You often said if you don't have good things, it reveals your lack of class. So I think you felt good about flaunting that you could buy things I couldn't afford to buy. And when you told me to take you shopping, your pride wouldn't allow you to not buy anything. At my words, Mary opened her mouth as if to retort something, but no words came out. She just twisted her face in displeasure. In other words, what I'm saying is correct. What the heck were you thinking? John's weak mutter echoes in the treatment room. Mary dropped her shoulders and kept her face down, not uttering a single word. About a month after her injury, Mary became able to walk. After that, I heard she started working at a factory with a company-provided housing facility. Regarding her debt, John apparently demanded that she work to pay back the amount in exchange for him consolidating it and repaying it in full. He said it was a job opportunity he found through a connection of an acquaintance, and the plan was for her to live in the housing facility and repay John from her salary, excluding necessary expenses. If she refused, she'd have to repay it on her own. Furthermore, when he said he would file for damages in divorce, she complied. John said he would make her live in the housing facility the whole time until the repayment was completed, however long that took. He hopes she'll have a change of heart while working like that, but if it's impossible, he's decided to divorce her. Who knows what will happen when she finishes repaying and comes back. For now, she occasionally calls to complain to Ethan, so I don't have much hope. Ethan tries to reason with her and sometimes doesn't even answer the phone, but for her, who has never properly worked before, it seems to be causing considerable stress. She just constantly grumbles. It's hard, I'm tired, I don't want to feel this way, I hate this and that. As for my relationship with Ethan, which at one point I seriously considered divorcing. After returning home from the hospital, he gave me a deep apology. I was very surprised to see someone apologizing so deeply for the first time in my life, but what surprised me even more was that Ethan was even crying with snot dripping down. I never thought she was doing such terrible things to you. And yet, I forced you to do as she said, telling you it would be the last time. I'm so sorry for saying that when I had no idea how much you hated it. He must have properly understood after seeing the messages from Mary that I showed him. It seemed to be tears overflowing with emotions like guilt, remorse, and empathy for me. Yes, he is a kind person, full of empathy and compassion. So much so that he doesn't hesitate to admit his faults and offer a deep apology while showing his tearful face like this. I remembered that I fell in love with him because he's this kind of person. It did hurt when you said things that seemed to take her side. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I feel clear about it now, so it's okay. Emma. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm so sorry. In a sense, we both had a valuable experience through this. I want to make use of it and deepen our bond once again. 2 years have passed since then, and we are now living as a family of 3 in a new place. Ethan was transferred after that, and we moved. I became a freelancer in anticipation of this. In this new place, I got pregnant, gave birth, and am currently in the midst of child rearing. My parents came to help out after the birth. I haven't been able to meet John in person yet, but when I talked to him over a video call while showing him the baby, the corners of his eyes drooped. Incidentally, Mary apparently still hasn't been able to come back. I plan to resume work soon. At first, I intend to keep the workload light while seeing how it goes, but balancing work and childcare will surely be tough. Even so, I want to live fulfilling days while cooperating with Ethan. While hospitalized and under dietary restrictions, my stepchild, Chelsea, brought a large amount of snacks into the hospital room and ate them. This could be life-threatening. When I scolded her, Chelsea shouted back, "If you had made healthy meals, I wouldn't be sick. Stop taking your frustrations out on me." Then she said to me, "You act all high and mighty, but you're just leeching off my dad." She twisted her mouth and glared at me with angry eyes. "Get a divorce and disappear somewhere." Then, all right. When I got back to the car, my husband William called, and I reported my interaction with Chelsea. He yelled at me, "She is sick. You need to be more supportive to her." I didn't respond and hung up the phone. I moved to a hotel to distance myself from Chelsea and William, but then my friend Elizabeth showed me a certain picture, and my mind changed. "Chelsea, I'll give you the divorce you want. But before that, I'll expose the true nature of your beloved dad. Look forward to it. I'm Whitney, a 45-year-old housewife. I married my colleague William 5 years ago. I was so focused on work that before I knew it, I was in my late 30s. I thought I had missed my chance to get married, but 7 years ago, William transferred to my department and asked me out. After 2 years of dating, we got married. William divorced his first wife because she cheated on him, and he had an elementary school daughter named Chelsea. My parents and friends were worried, but the Chelsea I met during our engagement was innocent and adorable. I was thrilled to have a child as soon as I got married. Even though she wasn't my biological child, I decided to raise her with love. However, that decision soon wavered. When we got married, Chelsea was in 6th grade and loved games, music, and eating. She would lie on the living room couch, immersed in games and music, always snacking on something. If you eat too many snacks, you won't be able to eat dinner. This is something parents often say to their children, but it was useless with her. She ate 3 meals a day plus a large number of snacks every day. Even for a growing child, eating 2 pancakes and 2 bags of chips before dinner, followed by 3 steaks, bread, and rice for dinner, was clearly too much. She wasn't in any sports clubs, so naturally, she was quite plump. Chelsea, I think you're eating too much. It's not good for your health. You often leave the vegetables and just eat the greasy stuff, right? When I couldn't take it anymore and warned her, she grimaced in annoyance. Shut up. You're not my real mom, so just leave me alone. But Chelsea cut me off. Your food is okay, but you need to be less nagging. Otherwise, my dad might dump you. Her insolent tone annoyed me, so I tried talking to William about it, but he just laughed it off. Come on, she's just going through a rebellious phase. Give her a break. But she is a bit, no, very much a glutton, isn't she? I pleaded patiently. It's not good for her health. She gets angry when there's no food in the house, so I keep snacks stocked, but she eats them all immediately. She hates low-calorie dried fruit. I had a huge appetite as a kid too, but it settled down before I turned 30. So, don't worry about it. William looked down at his slim physique and laughed. However, William was in the basketball club until college. The level of physical activity is totally different, so you can't compare them, but William, who doted on her, wouldn't listen. Eventually, when she entered middle school, she started hanging out with friends who were a bad influence. Despite having tests coming up, she would go to band concerts and stay out until late at night. At the same time, her clothing became flashier, and she started getting a lot of piercings. You're still in middle school. Going out late at night and wearing revealing clothes is not okay. I scolded her severely. It's dangerous for an adult to walk around alone at night, let alone a child like Chelsea. Plus, wearing revealing clothes. It would be too late if something happened. Aren't all those piercings a bit much? Whitney, you're such a worrywart. Next to her, who pouted, William's relaxed voice chimed in. What's the big deal about this? That's right. Maybe you, being a coward, can't do it, but my friends and I are fine. I felt like tearing my hair out as Chelsea puffed up her chest. That's not the point. You don't understand the current times. Dad gets it, right? Seeking agreement, Chelsea looked at William, who gave her a conciliatory smile. Of course. You can do whatever you wish. As expected, you understand me a lot. At that moment, I wanted to tell William. Do whatever you want then. When Chelsea became a high school senior, she didn't study at all, instead being engrossed in games and music. Predictably, she was in a panic right before college applications. She barely got into the lowest-ranked school, but soon after, she started to frequently feel unwell. She complained of fatigue, exhaustion, stomach aches, nausea, and mild fever. The local clinic diagnosed it as stress from school life. I initially thought so too, but since it kept happening, I urged Chelsea to go to a general hospital. I'm sensitive, so I don't want shots or tests. Chelsea whined, and William sympathized. Forcing her to go is cruel. Let's wait and see for a bit longer. But what if it's something serious? William and I are at work during the day. What if she collapses? Then Chelsea said, as if it were obvious. Then you should quit your job. That's right. If Whitney takes care of Chelsea, I can work without worry. She can take her to the hospital if needed. I was momentarily at a loss for words. But she is your daughter. Don't be cold. She's your daughter too, even if you're not blood related. That's right. Anyway, Dad earns more than you, so if you quit your job, no one will be inconvenienced. I felt a sense of fulfillment in my job, but arguing against this for the sake of my daughter was difficult. Reluctantly, I informed my workplace of my resignation. Then Chelsea started treating me like a housekeeper. As soon as she got home from school, it began. Oh no, I forgot to buy pudding. Go to the bakery right now. Massage my feet. And my shoulders and back too. Why Chinese food? I feel like barbecue today. When she's feeling unwell, her mood gets even worse. Because she can't sleep, she would call me to the bedroom at night, making me listen to trivial complaints for hours. That teacher is so annoying. Are you listening? Don't fall asleep. Finally, she would make unreasonable demands like, do something about my headache. Hey, William, can't you do something about her? Exhausted from lack of sleep and mental fatigue, I tearfully begged William. I understand wanting to lean on someone when you're not feeling well, but it's really hard for me too. William frowned and sighed. You became Chelsea's mom, so you should handle this. A child's whims are cute, aren't they? If you say that, then you take over on weekends. William shrugged helplessly. I'm working to support you all. Don't you understand that? At least fulfill our cute daughter's requests with a smile. Then can't you at least come home a little earlier? I pleaded desperately. You've been working late, and there are a lot of weekend work and overnight business trips. Can't you spend more time with Chelsea? I can't. I'm busy. She's your responsibility, Whitney. William entrusted her to me, refusing to get involved himself. I grew more and more distrustful of him. Even carefree William began to feel a sense of urgency when Chelsea's condition persisted for a year. A colleague suggested it might be liver problems. We should get her thoroughly checked at the hospital. All right. I was exasperated that William finally changed his mind after a colleague's suggestion, despite my repeated pleas. Nonetheless, I accompanied them to the hospital. After a series of tests, it was confirmed that she had cirrhosis of the liver. She has jaundice and ascites. Currently, it's grade B. It's not immediately life-threatening, but it's quite serious. Why did you let it go this far? I'm sorry. William and Chelsea, usually carefree, hung their heads with serious expressions. It seemed she developed cirrhosis from hepatitis C. Any idea what might have caused it? For example, using poorly sterilized piercing tools? Oh! Chelsea exclaimed. Realizing the foolishness of her actions, Chelsea looked like she was about to cry, biting her lip. Will there be surgery? William asked anxiously, and the doctor replied calmly. First, she needs to be hospitalized for nutritional and exercise guidance. However, if this continues, it could progress to liver cancer. As soon as her condition stabilizes, she should undergo a liver transplant. Understood. We watched as the nurse led Chelsea to her room, and then William and I went home to prepare for her hospitalization. While driving, William spoke. "Hey, let's register for a living donor liver transplant. Waiting for a donor might worsen Chelsea's condition." "That's true." "Then it's up to you, Whitney." "What?" I stared at William's profile. "You're registering too, right?" "No. I can't handle pain." I couldn't believe my ears. They say donors can suffer post-operative complications like bowel obstructions or duodenal ulcers. If that happened to me, it would be bad, right? I'm the one working to support us. That's true, but... I wanted to ask, is it okay if it's me? Don't worry. They say it's not life-threatening. The liver regenerates even if part of it is cut out. It's not a big deal. I felt uncomfortable with William's cheerful smile, but I couldn't just watch Chelsea's condition worsen. So, I took the compatibility test and matched, registering as the only donor. This way, as soon as Chelsea's health improved, I could give her part of my liver. I was honestly terrified, but even though we're not blood-related, I am her mom. I wanted to support her in any way I could. One day, we got a call from the hospital. Chelsea's condition had stabilized, and they wanted to schedule the liver transplant surgery. Since she hated me, I feared she would refuse if she knew I was the donor. So, I asked the doctor to keep it a secret. Soon, the surgery date was set, and I went to the hospital for pre-surgery tests. On my way back, I stopped by Chelsea's room and was shocked. Despite being under dietary restrictions, she had brought a large amount of snacks from the hospital shop and was eating them. I couldn't help but lash out in frustration. "You know your condition, right? This could be life-threatening. Take your health seriously." Chelsea spat out some snacks and blamed me. "This is all your fault." "What? If you had made healthier meals and snacks these past 5 years, I wouldn't be sick. Take responsibility." Her cruel words left me feeling drained. "What are you talking about? You were the one who demanded high-calorie meals and snacks. Stop taking it out on me." I retorted sharply, and Chelsea sneered. "All you do is boss me around. It's annoying," she said in a low voice, distorting her face. "I don't need you anymore. I don't even want to see you. You act all high and mighty leeching off my dad. Get a divorce and disappear." Her words, filled with hatred, pierced my heart like sharp arrows. My anger quickly subsided, and I became calm. "Then, all right," I said and left the room. When I got back to the car, William called, so I told him about my interaction with Chelsea, and he yelled at me. "What? Are you stupid? She is sick. Be more supportive to her." "But what if her condition worsens due to stress?" I felt utterly miserable. Why do I have to be treated like this? I hung up the phone without replying and drove out of the parking lot. When I got home, I packed my suitcase with essentials and left. I decided to stay at a hotel for a while because I didn't want to see William or Chelsea's faces. The next day, I met my friend Elizabeth at a cafe and told her about William and Chelsea. Elizabeth looked troubled. "Actually," she started to say, but then stopped. After fiddling with her phone for a while, she showed me some pictures. I was shocked. "You should look into this." "Right. Thank you." Elizabeth sent me the images from her phone. As I looked at them, a fierce anger welled up, making my whole body feel hot. "Chelsea, I'll give you the divorce you want. But before that, I'll expose the true nature of your beloved dad. Just wait and see." After parting ways with Elizabeth, I went to a real estate agent and quickly signed a lease for a short-term apartment. I arranged for movers then transferred all my belongings there. I also found a full-time job and started working right away. I ignored William's calls and messages, but 3 days later, when I got home and checked my phone, there were 50 missed calls. Reluctantly, I called him back, only to be yelled at furiously. "Where the hell are you? Why aren't you coming home? And why did you send divorce papers without a word? It's none of your business." I coldly replied to William, who was speaking rapidly, which made him even angrier. "Don't mess with me. You're Chelsea's mom." His thunderous roar made me pull the phone away from my ear. "You even refused her liver transplant. Get to the hospital and re-register now." "No, I won't donate to her anymore," I said firmly, and I heard William sigh over the phone. "You're being childish over a little fight. It's pathetic. Say whatever you want. Don't you care about her? Chelsea and I are strangers, right? And I've never found her cute since we got married." I seized the moment to speak my mind. "Did you file the divorce papers?" "I can't. If we get divorced, I'll be removed from the family and won't be able to donate." I sighed in frustration at William's irritated tone. "Why do you insist on me? Why don't you, her dad, donate?" William dismissed my reasonable suggestion with annoyance. "Because I can't handle pain. And there are complications, right?" "It seems so." "Then I'm out. Chelsea's not in immediate danger anyway. If you refuse, we'll wait for another donor." "Really?" William prioritizes himself over Chelsea. I was utterly dismayed by William's self-centered attitude. "I'll visit the hospital next week. We need to talk." With that, I hung up the phone. A week later, as promised, I went to Chelsea's hospital room, and as soon as she saw me, she yelled, "Hey! Don't just leave like that. Tell the doctor to re-register as a donor." I was disgusted by her lack of manners in asking for help. Neither she nor William had any sense of decency. "No. You're the one who told me to get lost and divorce Dad." That's not true," Chelsea stammered, trying to make excuses. "I don't want you two to break up because of me. Right, Dad? You don't want to divorce Whitney, do you?" Chelsea pouted and looked up at William, who nodded so vigorously his head might fall off. "Of course not. I want us to keep living happily together as a family," William said with a smile, but I handed over the photos and investigation report from my bag. "Really? But she seems to have another happy family." Chelsea's face turned pale as she looked at the pictures. "Chelsea, have you been secretly meeting your mom?" William asked angrily, and Chelsea replied sheepishly. "Well..." William slammed the photos on the hospital table. In them were images of Chelsea with a plump woman who looked a lot like her, a man in a suit, and Chelsea. They were enjoying a meal at a restaurant, probably taken secretly from a nearby table. Another picture showed the three of them walking down the street with high-end shopping bags, looking happy. "How did you know I was meeting my mom and her new husband? Hiring a detective is so mean," Chelsea countered, and I explained. "I noticed the high-end bags in your room when I was cleaning. I wondered where you got the money since you don't work." "Mind your own business. I can't just ignore it. I'm still your mom after all." I smiled at her, who was glaring at me. "When you came home after eating out, you sometimes smelled like perfume. I never believed you were just eating out with friends." I didn't notice at all. William tilted his head, and Chelsea pouted. "Dad, you come home after I've showered. And on weekends, you come home after midnight." "Oh, right." William scratched his head and laughed. It happened so often that I got suspicious and hired a detective agency. I'm relieved it wasn't bad friends you were hanging out with. None of your business. Dad, I'm sorry. I couldn't say no to Mom. Chelsea tried to appease William with a fawning smile. I understand. William forced a smile. But his smile quickly disappeared when I played the recording. Hey Mom, my dad is super cheap. He works at a big company, but my allowance is only $100 a month. Isn't that ridiculous? I can barely buy one outfit. This poor lifestyle sucks. Chelsea, that's tough. For now, endure it and marry someone like my husband who works at a trading company. Her mom spoke in a sweet voice similar to her, and a man's voice agreed. Chelsea, you should come to our place. I'll buy you anything you want. But if I move, I can't see my friends. And leaving Dad alone would be pitiful. He doesn't have any friends. That's right. You're kind for not abandoning Dad. The three of them laughed heartily, and William turned red to his ears. Chelsea turned pale and curled up on the bed. Chelsea, this is terrible. After a long silence, William spoke. You know the reason for the divorce was your mom's affair with this guy, right? And now you're secretly meeting the three of them. Though he spoke calmly, William's eyes were filled with anger, and she was shaken. But her new husband is a good person. He buys me everything I want and takes me to fancy restaurants. Honestly, I think Mom made the right choice marrying him. In her panic, Chelsea was saying strange things. When I ask Dad, he refuses to go to fancy restaurants. Why don't we have money when he works at such a big company? It's not like he gambles or anything like that. William's face twisted with rage. That's none of your business. Besides, you've been secretly eating lavish meals every month, and that's why you developed cirrhosis from hepatitis C. From now on, you are forbidden to meet them. Don't you know? Even after a divorce, a child has the right to see their mom. Chelsea retorted defiantly. I thought marrying this woman would increase my salary, and we could live in luxury, but my allowance is small, we don't eat out, and all I get is Whitney's complaints. There's no point in being at home. Ah, so that's why he was so nice to me during our engagement. One mystery solved, I felt a sense of clarity. Next to my smiling face, William spoke to Chelsea. Look, I work myself to the bone to support you. Do you think I like working overtime and going on business trips? But Dad, I'm saving for your future. That's more important than living in luxury now. I stared at William's profile as he tried to reason with Chelsea. What? What's wrong? William asked irritably. I talked to your boss recently. You know, we used to work in the same department. Oh, what did you talk about? Chelsea also listened with interest. I told him that William has been too busy to be at home for the past few years. I asked if he could reduce your overtime, weekend work, and business trips. He was confused. William suddenly looked shocked. He must have known what was coming next. Your boss said our department has been slow lately. There's almost no overtime, weekend work, or business trips. Everyone leaves on time every day. Isn't that strange? I then displayed images on my phone. I placed several photos and an investigation report from my bag next to the documents about Chelsea. You've been a regular at a girls' night club downtown? Go in there 4 times a week after work? No wonder you come home so late. Chelsea was shocked and snatched the report from my hand. As she read it, her expression turned horrified. Her hands trembled as she read aloud in a low voice. On weekends, he spends the night with a 20-year-old employee at the apartment he bought for her. They travel together every few months. Incredible, it's like you're living together. Do you realize you have a wife and daughter waiting for you at home? I can spend my salary however I want. It's none of your business. William grumbled. She's saving for college, so I have to frequent the club to help raise her salary. Supporting someone working hard is just being a good person. It's like volunteering. I laughed mockingly at William's excuse. That apartment is the same as Elizabeth's. It seems the residents have been gossiping about seeing you shopping and spending time together in the lobby. Oh, do they think we're a handsome couple? You're a fool, no. I sneered at William. They're laughing at you for being a middle-aged man playing around with a girl young enough to be your daughter. Even I'm beyond angry. I'm just dumbfounded. William's eyes widened with anger. Don't call it an affair. I truly love her. Disgusting. Chelsea contorted her face and spat out. Dad, are you serious? Having an affair with a girl my age is totally messed up. Shut up. Let me enjoy my romance. William retorted with a defiant expression. As Chelsea and I grew more irritated, he spoke passionately. She said she wants to marry me after graduating college. Rejoice, Chelsea. You'll have a young and beautiful mom. William's sleazy smile made Chelsea sigh with a troubled expression. Dad, wake up. You're just being taken for your money. I don't want a mom who's close to my age. That must be a joke. I don't care. I'll marry her even if you don't approve. Don't be ridiculous. If you have money to spend on someone else, increase my allowance. Is that girl more important than me? Chelsea shouted, and William responded with a smile. No, Chelsea, you're more important. But you seem like you'll be fine with a healthy liver. Chelsea shot me a sharp look. That's right. You can get divorced, but give me your liver first. She got out of bed and approached me, grabbing my arm with surprising strength and hurling insults. That organ regenerates, right? So just give it to me. You're my mom on paper, so do your duty. Be useful for once, you idiot. This is ridiculous. I've done my best for you and your dad these 5 years, and now you're threatening me? I said, exasperated, and William sneered. Are you scared of the surgery? Whitney, you're a coward and a hypocrite. Pathetic. I told you before, if you're so concerned, why don't you do it yourself? I said clearly, and Chelsea defended William. Dad was incompatible, so it's not his fault. That's right. Sorry, Chelsea. William made an apologetic gesture. I sighed and pressed the play button on the recording. Because I hate pain. There's also the risk of complications, right? It seems so. Then I'm out. Chelsea's not in immediate danger. If you refuse, we'll wait for another donor. Chelsea was stunned by the recording. What? That's your dad's honest opinion. He didn't even take the compatibility test. If you don't believe me, ask the doctor. Chelsea turned to William with a stiff neck. William was sweating profusely and seemed at a loss for words. In the end, he prioritizes himself over you. No, it's not like that. Chelsea's eyes filled with tears. This is so terrible. I trusted Dad completely. William callously added, but I prefer slimmer girls. Chelsea, like your mom, you keep getting fatter. It's your own fault you're sick. There was nothing fatherly about William's protruding lips and cheek scratching. Why not ask your mom? She's a blood relative, so it might be possible. William proposed as if he had a brilliant idea, leaving Chelsea dumbfounded. Dad, did you forget? Mom has diabetes and high blood pressure. She can't donate. Oh, right. He had completely forgotten about his ex-wife's condition. William and Chelsea exchanged looks and then sat on the floor. seemingly resigned. "Please, Whitney, give her your liver. I absolutely can't do it. You're our only hope. As my daughter, you should be happy to help. If you refuse, I'll tell everyone in the hospital that Dad's new wife mistreated me." "Enough!" I shouted angrily. "How many times do I have to say it? I will never register as a donor for you again. I won't be used as a housekeeper, insulted, and then have my liver taken away. Are you still holding a grudge? What a joke you are!" Frustrated, I crouched down and pulled out snacks from under the bed. I pushed away Chelsea's hand as she tried to snatch them from me and walked into the hallway with the snacks. Then I headed to the nurse's station and raised my voice. "Chelsea is eating snacks again!" Before I finished speaking, a nurse rushed over and sternly confronted Chelsea. "How many times do I have to tell you to stop? At this rate, even if a donor appears, the transplant won't be possible." "I'm sorry." "Chelsea's dad, you need to be stricter with her. Act like parents for once." Glancing at the dejected Chelsea and William, I left the hospital room with a smile. Despite being forbidden by the doctor, Chelsea had been secretly eating snacks and drinking juice instead of hospital food. Her test results were so poor that her treatment was prolonged, and she had to take a break from school. "At least take the donor suitability test," the nurse suggested to William, but he refused flatly, which made her furious. "You spend money and love on your mistress but refuse to help me. I don't need you anymore. I'll never rely on you again." I said no. "Just wait patiently until another donor appears." Is that what a dad should say? Unbelievable. They fought fiercely in the hospital room every day, and their relationship was completely cold. Later, William signed the divorce papers I sent him and returned them. I filed it immediately, and the divorce was finalized without issue. I also received the $10,000 settlement payment in one lump sum for William's affair with the nightclub employee, which was a relief. However, the problems began afterward. Even after the divorce, William continued to pester me. Knowing where I worked, he would wait for me at the station near my office after work and pressure me to reconcile. "Come on, Whitney, I need you. Let's get back together. Chelsea's medical bills are piling up. After paying you the settlement, my savings are gone. You blew your savings on your mistress. Why did you ask her for help?" I said coldly. "She dumped me when she found out I was married. Chelsea won't talk to me either. I'm lonely." "That's your problem. If you keep stalking me, I'll call the police," I yelled, and William finally stopped showing up. Afterward, news of his affair with a 20-year-old got out at work, and he lost the respect of his colleagues. Now, he reportedly goes to work feeling awkward. When Chelsea told her mother about her hospitalization and bragged about her past misdeeds towards me, she complained about the donor registration being revoked. Her mother replied coldly, "I never thought you couldn't be grateful. I'm disappointed. I once hoped we could live together, but let's forget about it. Get along with your dad." She read the message and cried, taking out her frustration on the nurses. Now, she is known as the biggest troublemaker in the ward. Since I canceled my donor registration, no new donors have appeared. Her years of overeating and drinking have taken a toll, and her condition has only worsened. Despite hastily adhering to a diet regimen, it was too late, and the doctors warned she could develop liver cancer at any time. She now lives in constant fear, crying through her days in the hospital. Over these past 5 years, I realized something profoundly. No matter how much you give, some people will never appreciate it. Though I went through tough times, I also found good things. A coworker who encouraged me during my low points became close, and we started dating and eventually got married. At the home party held instead of a wedding, Elizabeth and my parents were relieved by my new husband's kind and sincere nature. I want to build a happy family with him this time. Mom, I'm pregnant. Stumbling over her words, my 14-year-old daughter Madeline reveals this to me. Her frail, haggard appearance makes it all too easy to imagine how much anguish and tears it took for her to utter those words. There's no trace left of the bright, energetic Madeline from before. I couldn't possibly believe what Madeline was telling me, but being handed a positive pregnancy test leaves no room for doubt. Still not fully grasping the extent of Madeline's pregnancy, I gently try to probe for more details. It must have been so hard carrying this alone. Thank you for telling me. When did you take this test? I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Did you buy the test yourself? And who's the father? If she's pregnant, there has to be someone responsible. I know I shouldn't pry too much, but without understanding the situation, I can't take the appropriate actions for her. Yet no matter how much I call out to her, Madeline just keeps mumbling apologies, either confused or terrified of something. The next day, I consult with my husband Daryl. But kind-hearted and extremely sensitive Daryl becomes distraught over Madeline's pregnancy. Worried for them both, the three of us head to the nearest station to go to an obstetrician. But on the train platform, I realize I forgot my insurance card and have to rush back home, leaving Daryl and Madeline. Returning home, I grab the insurance card and am about to hurry out when the landline, which rarely rings, starts ringing. Sensing something ominous, I pick up the receiver and receive news that Daryl and Madeline have been taken to the hospital. Not wanting to accept reality, I rush to the hospital, searching for them to no avail. An officer at the hospital tells me the truth, leaving me in utter shock. I burn with a fierce desire for revenge against whoever subjected my precious family to such a terrible fate. Back home, I gather the people I need to talk to and immediately confess. Daryl and Madeline, they jumped in front of a train and committed suicide. My name is Sherry. I'm 43 years old. Originally from Boston, I worked in sales at a major insurance company. But when I got married, I quit my job and moved to my husband Daryl's hometown in the countryside. We live with his parents. The reason is that I fell in love with Daryl, who was working hard to preserve the fine traditions of his parents' bespoke tailoring shop for the future, and wanted to support him. The products sold at my in-laws' bespoke shop were too good to let fade away. I fell for Daryl, but another big factor was that I felt strongly drawn to the products my in-laws were selling. Sales have been in the red lately, haven't they? Yeah, it's not good at all. It's the changing times, I guess. Almost all the other shops have gone out of business. Ours is pretty much the only bespoke tailor left around here. For a while after moving to the countryside, I also worked at the bespoke shop handling sales. So even without hearing the numbers, I knew we were operating at a loss. Most of our business hours are quiet, with no customers. My in-laws' acquaintances do come to buy things, but it's only a handful of patrons. It's not uncommon to go a whole day without a single customer. Even without sales, it still costs money just to keep the shop running. The people making the products here are my father-in-law Jody, Daryl, and a few other craftsmen. Sales are handled by my mother-in-law Sue, my sister-in-law Sylvia, and myself. It may be a small operation, but with employees to support, operating at a loss like this means we're on the brink of shutting down. At this rate, each day will just be a slow decline into ruin. I couldn't stand that. As a woman of action, I got permission from my in-laws to put my skills from my insurance job to full use, pitching our products to various shops. While looking for places that would carry our wares, I also started working on developing new products suited to the times. Still a novice when it came to bespoke tailoring, I first visited a couple who used to run a bespoke shop and were friends with my in-laws, to gain some knowledge. From there I expanded my network, researching and gathering information on what kind of bespoke tailoring is desired today. I've never seen suit designs like this before. But these are designs you develop together with various people. I'll discuss it with Dad and the other craftsmen. Thanks. I hope this can help boost our sales, even just a little. Thanks to the new products I painstakingly developed with many people, customer traffic began to increase slightly. After that, with the birth of my daughter Madeline, I no longer had the leeway to show my face at the shop. But wanting to contribute to sales even a little, I started selling our products on social media. Struggling for over a decade like this, I devoted myself to launching many new products, selling online, and securing partner shops to carry our wares. Before long, the bespoke shop had finally pulled through the crisis of closing down. As the bespoke shop's business got on track and Daryl grew into a fine craftsman, our daughter Madeline entered middle school. At an age where she could act independently and had a solid way of thinking, I felt a bit lonely realizing my role as a parent would gradually become less necessary. But more than that, I was filled with heartwarming feelings watching Madeline enjoy her days to the fullest, smiling brightly as she devoted herself to clubs and physical activities. About a year passed smoothly, and around the time Madeline turned 14 and advanced a grade, Madeline, who had been so lively and cheerful, suddenly became gloomy. At first I thought it might be teenage rebellion, but she still obediently listened to what Daryl and I said without avoiding us, so there had to be another reason. Madeline, did something happen recently? You don't seem like yourself. It's nothing. I think I'm just a bit tired from sports. I'm going back to my room. Even when I tried to make opportunities to talk, Madeline would only say she was tired from her sports teams. She started shutting herself in her room more, and Daryl and I grew concerned. After Madeline returned to her room, leaving Daryl and I alone in the living room, I couldn't help but voice my worries to him. Why do you think she won't talk to us? Am I that unreliable? Sherry, you're a wonderful mother in my eyes. When the time is right, I'm sure she'll open up to us. I wonder if something happened at school, or... I'm just as worried as you are. Let's be patient a little longer, Sherry. Encouraged by Daryl's kind words, I resolved to take my time and be there for Madeline. It's a sensitive time, she must be feeling so alone and anxious. Maybe at her age, parents seem annoying, but my feelings for Madeline, my love for her, will never change. Wanting her to feel that, I put in my utmost effort to face Madeline and continue supporting her. Weeks later, Madeline still hadn't regained her cheerfulness. Her face seemed even more strained, as if agonizing over something, and she often lacked focus. I spent my days desperately holding back the urge to pry out of excessive concern. Mom. Madeline came to me in the living room after I finished checking social media and packaging products for online sales. It was already late at night. Normally Madeline would be asleep in her room at this hour, but that day she came out and approached me. Maybe she was finally ready to confide her troubles. Thinking this, I shook off my sleepiness and had Madeline sit on the sofa for now. What is it, Madeline? It's okay, we have plenty of time, so take your time. Yeah. Madeline fell silent after that, seemingly at a loss for words or unable to muster the courage to speak. It felt like it had been a long time since I properly looked at Madeline face to face like this. Looking closely, there was no trace of her former energetic aura, and her complexion was poor. She often left her dinner unfinished lately and seemed to have lost some weight, so I was desperate to hear the rest of what she had to say. But I held back, knowing that pressing her now would only corner Madeline when she'd finally decided to open up. I waited patiently, gently rubbing Madeline's back. Finally, she opened her mouth heavily. "Mom, I'm pregnant." "What?" "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mom." With trembling hands, Madeline took out a pregnancy test with a positive result. I was completely bewildered by this unbelievable reality. But seeing Madeline tearfully repeating apologies, I realized she must have been suffering alone with this worry for so long, and my heart ached. Madeline, it must have been so hard, keeping this to yourself. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "So, do you have any idea who?" "If you're pregnant, then." But no matter how I asked, Madeline only responded with sobs and apologies. I knew I shouldn't rush her, but it was difficult to plan our next steps without knowing the facts. I tried asking every question I could think of. Still, Madeline only trembled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mom, forgive me. Please don't hate me." "It's okay, Madeline. I could never hate you." Madeline seemed to be crushed under the weight of what she had done, hyperventilating to the point where she couldn't give any details. It was late at night and she needed sleep to recover, so I soothed the panicking Madeline to calm her down, deciding to have her explain more at the hospital tomorrow. The next day, I woke up earlier than usual and woke Daryl. "What's going on?" "It's so early in the morning." "I'm sorry for the early wake-up call, but there's something important I need to talk to you about." "It's about Madeline." As soon as Daryl realized it was about Madeline, he sat up immediately, ready to listen. "I need you to stay calm when you hear this. Madeline is pregnant. I just found out in the middle of the night too. I only know the facts, but..." "Pregnant? You're joking, right?" His disbelief was understandable. Daryl's eyes went wide, his voice and lips trembling as he forced the words out. As if to say, "Surely not our child." I felt the same way. I think Madeline had been agonizing over this for a while. After she told me, she kept apologizing over and over while hyperventilating. You've seen how she's been acting lately, right? Yeah. When Madeline told me, I was extremely shaken up too, all sorts of emotions threatening to explode out of me. But Daryl seemed to be taking the shock even harder than I did. I could tell he was trying his best to listen despite being upset, but it didn't feel like he was just passively taking in my words. Daryl has always been kind-hearted and sensitive by nature. Even without saying it out loud, he was probably imagining how Madeline felt, taking on damage as if it was his own. And as a father, he must have been shocked that his young daughter was pregnant. Until we get more details at the hospital, let's not say anything that might upset Madeline. We're planning to go to the OBGYN in the next town over today. I want you to come with us." "Okay," I told him because I felt I couldn't hide the truth, but seeing how shaken and haggard Daryl became filled me with regret for saying anything. But I knew I was doing the right thing. Daryl must be desperately trying to process the reality of the situation. If that was the case, then I needed to take charge with a strong will. I felt bad for my in-laws, but I contacted them to let them know Madeline had suddenly fallen ill and got permission for Daryl and I to take off work. When Madeline woke up, I tried asking her again about the circumstances of her pregnancy, but couldn't get any solid information. Maybe it was hard for her to say in front of her father. With that thought, I simply gave the silent Madeline a gentle hug. As I did that, I realized our departure time was approaching and the three of us left the house. We took a taxi to the nearest train station. When we got to the platform, I realized I had forgotten something critical. I think I forgot Madeline's insurance card. In that case, should I go back and get it? No, you and Madeline wait here on the platform. I'll go grab it and be right back. I could have let Daryl handle it, but I felt uneasy about making the somewhat long walk alone in his current state, unable to hide his fatigue after hearing about Madeline. I didn't want him getting lost in thought and becoming careless. And I couldn't very well make Madeline walk unnecessarily when she looked ill. So I left the two of them on the station platform and headed back home. Our house is a fair distance from the nearest station. If there had been a taxi at the stand outside, I would have taken one, but there wasn't a single car there at a time like this. So I decided to sprint home at full speed. Honestly, I wanted to get Madeline to the OBGYN as soon as possible. As I ran, short of breath, I harshly criticized myself for forgetting something so important. I arrived home, put the insurance card in my wallet, and was about to leave when the rarely used landline phone suddenly started ringing. I could have ignored it and rushed to the station, but I felt I had to answer. I dashed to the living room and picked up the phone. The caller was a nurse from the biggest hospital in the area. In a flat tone, she delivered the shocking news that Daryl and Madeline had been taken to the hospital. The hospital staff must have been swamped, because she didn't provide any other information, just telling me to come to the hospital immediately. In a daze, I called a taxi and headed to the hospital where the two of them presumably were. On the way, the taxi driver mentioned there had been a fatal accident on the train tracks halting the trains. Hearing that, I broke out in a cold sweat wondering if the people who jumped might have been Daryl and Madeline. The image of a depressed and unwell Madeline alongside a haggard Daryl, reeling in shock after learning of his daughter's pregnancy. A vivid scenario played out in my mind of these two impulsively jumping onto the tracks together as a train approached. It can't be, I told myself, but once the worst-case scenario popped into my head, it continued smoldering inside me. Please, please let them be okay. I arrived at the hospital and entered the ER where many nurses and doctors were rushing about in a flurry. Looking a bit further in, I saw the surgery in progress, light glowing red. An ominous feeling stirred up my chest, the negative speculations mocking my wish that I was just overthinking things. I couldn't very well talk to the frantically scurrying nurses, but I also didn't know where to go. As I stood there at a loss, a police officer approached me. Is there something I can help you with? Actually, I explained the series of events that led me here. The officer gave a small nod of understanding. It seemed he had been waiting for me. Then, he began to speak in a heavy tone about what had happened on the station platform with Daryl and Madeline. Brace yourself for what I'm about to tell you. The truth is. After that, I was stunned by the revealed facts. Burning with a desire for revenge, I left the hospital alone and returned home. Then, in order to report today's events to my in-laws and family, I had them gather in the living room after closing the shop. I'm sorry, Jody, Sue. Sylvia, thank you for joining us too. What on earth is going on? I heard Madeline wasn't feeling well and got worried. You don't think something happened to Madeline, do you? While Jody and Sue expressed their concern, Sylvia looked bored as she inspected her nails. Her behavior only fueled my anger further, but I had to hold on just a little longer. I would expose her true colors. With that thought in mind, I began to speak, my emotions still running high. The truth is, Madeline is pregnant. And today, on the way to the obstetrician with the family, she and Daryl jumped in front of a train in an attempted suicide pact. My in-laws were left speechless by my explanation. Their reaction was completely understandable. The shocking nature of my words naturally left them at a loss. However, Sylvia's response was markedly different. Upon hearing the news, she began trembling, a look of panic spreading across her face. Her reaction was exactly as I had anticipated, and I had to stifle the laughter welling up inside me. As Sylvia turned pale and shook, my in-laws tried to calm her, their voices soothing. But Sylvia brushed off their attempts at comfort. "I'm not to blame. I didn't do anything wrong. I would have never imagined they would be jumping in front of a train." With that outburst, she fled from the living room. Jody and Sue watched in bewilderment as Sylvia ran off, clearly having no idea what was happening. "What on earth? What's going on?" Suddenly, an ear-piercing scream rang out, prompting Jody and Sue to jump to their feet and rush out of the living room. There they found Sylvia, collapsed on the ground in shock. Standing before her were Daryl and Madeline, both leveling disgusted glares at Sylvia. "How dare you treat my precious daughter so cruelly? I can't believe it. I trusted you, Auntie. We've already consulted the police about taking appropriate action. You're going to have to take responsibility for what you've done." Left behind by the rapid developments, Jody and Sue stared at me in utter confusion, clearly at a loss. Though my goal had been to expose Sylvia's misdeeds, I had still told a lie but left my in-laws reeling. Feeling the need to apologize and explain the truth, I began to recount what had really happened. When I arrived at the hospital, the police officer informed me that Daryl and Madeline had fallen down a flight of stairs on the train platform. According to eyewitness reports, Madeline had stumbled on the steps, and though Daryl tried to catch her, they both ended up tumbling down. A passerby who saw the accident called for an ambulance and reported the incident to the police. Thanks to their quick action, Daryl and Madeline were rushed to the hospital within minutes of the accident occurring. Though they were both covered in bruises, their lives weren't in danger and hospitalization wouldn't be necessary, much to my relief. The officer who responded to the call was exceptionally kind. Despite having already finished processing the scene, he waited for me, a family member, to arrive at the emergency ward. "You mentioned that your daughter is pregnant. With a fall like that, I'm afraid there's a possibility she may have miscarried." "Oh no. I believe they're running tests now. Please, follow me." The officer led me deep into the emergency ward, where I spotted Daryl and Madeline sitting on chairs in the hallway. I broke into a run, rushing to their side. "Madeline! Daryl! Thank goodness! Thank goodness you're all right." "Sherry, I'm so sorry for worrying you." "Mom! I'm sorry." As I embraced them, I felt the warmth of their bodies and they responded to my frantic questions, bringing tears of relief to my eyes. Daryl's arms and head were wrapped in bandages, but Madeline appeared to be unharmed. While I was relieved by that fact, the officer's words echoed in my mind. To face pregnancy and miscarriage at such a young age was unimaginably cruel. What about the test results? About that. It turns out Madeline wasn't actually pregnant. What? Really? Madeline had apparently been worried about her missed periods. However, the doctor suggested that her young age, sleep deprivation, and stress were likely contributing factors. Her eating habits had also been poor recently, which undoubtedly played a role as well. But the pregnancy test was positive. The doctor thought that was strange too. "Madeline, where did you get that pregnancy test?" "Well, Auntie gave it to me." As soon as she began to explain, tears welled up in Madeline's eyes as a memory seemed to surface. I quickly pulled out a handkerchief and tried to wipe away her tears, but they continued to flow endlessly. Daryl and I listened intently to Madeline's halting, jumbled explanation, trying to piece together what had driven her to such despair. In summary, Madeline had been anxious about missing her period for 2 months. Having never experienced that before, she was filled with unease. Unfortunately, Sylvia found out about her worries. It's not normal to miss your period for 2 months, right? Something must be seriously wrong. Maybe you're sick, or maybe you're pregnant. You're right. I'm really worried. Why don't you take a pregnancy test, just to be sure? I have a few on hand. But I haven't done anything that would get me pregnant. Well, it doesn't hurt to check. Come on, it'll only take a minute. Overwhelmed by Sylvia's forcefulness, Madeline found herself unable to refuse and reluctantly took the test. And the result was positive. Despite not having engaged in any activities that could lead to pregnancy, Madeline was baffled by the test results and went to Sylvia for advice. I took the test, and this is positive, isn't it? Are you serious? Getting pregnant at your age is a disaster. Your life is basically over. I guess school is out of the question now, huh? But I haven't done anything that would get me pregnant. What? The test results don't lie. Do you know how accurate these tests are? 99.9%. That means you're pregnant. What are you going to do now? This is going to cause so much trouble for me and your mom and dad. Oh no! What should I do, Auntie? Though Madeline insisted she had done nothing wrong, Sylvia declared that the test results were absolute. Her expression turned terrifying as she berated Madeline. Panicking and at a loss for what to do, Madeline turned to Sylvia for help. But Sylvia just glared at her with utter revulsion, brushing off her pleas. Getting pregnant in middle school? What is wrong with you? That's disgusting. I can't believe you do something like that when you're so young. You're acting like a total slut. What? You can't even support yourself, and now you're pregnant? This is a serious crime, you know. We've worked so hard to get the store back on its feet, and now your baby is going to ruin everything and maybe even force us to close down. I will never forgive you if that happens. You better figure this out. Rather than providing Madeline with accurate information, Sylvia did nothing but stoke her fears before storming off, leaving Madeline alone to deal with the fallout. Abandoned and directionless, Madeline didn't know what to do. She wanted to reach out for help, but Sylvia's cruel words haunted her, paralyzing her. Madeline was terrified that her own parents, the ultimate authority figures in her life, would react the same way Sylvia had. Unable to voice her fears, she bottled everything up, heaping her troubles to herself. With no friends to confide in, Madeline was left to bear the crushing weight of a potential pregnancy all alone. The emotional strain sapped her energy, robbed her of sleep, and stole her appetite. In fact, it was sleep deprivation and malnourishment that caused the dizziness that sent Madeline tumbling down those fateful stairs. By the time Madeline finished her story, her face was a mess of tears and snot. No child should have to shoulder such a terrible burden alone. I pulled Madeline into a tight embrace. Daryl, having heard everything, was crying too. For a long while, the three of us just held each other. Madeline, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry I didn't notice. Me too. I'm sorry, Madeline. No, it's okay. I could feel you both supporting me, even if I didn't say anything. So, it's not your fault. As we hugged, I noticed Madeline was still crying, her body trembling. It seemed the incident had left her traumatized, and my heart ached for her. I couldn't forgive Sylvia for putting my child through such an ordeal. I told Daryl and Madeline to come home once they had calmed down a bit, then left the hospital on my own. After hearing the whole story, my in-laws turned to face Sylvia, their faces flushed with anger. Sylvia, finding herself without allies, glanced around nervously as she searched for words. About that pregnancy test you gave Madeline. Could it have been a fake? I did some research and found out there are novelty tests designed to always show a positive result. They're mostly sold online. Did you know that? I don't know anything about that. I've never heard of such a thing. Well then, you won't mind showing us your purchase history, right? Why should I have to show you what's on my phone? No way. I'm not letting you snoop through my stuff. If you really didn't know, you wouldn't be so defensive. And you just said you never would have thought to do something like that, didn't you? Sounds to me like you're admitting guilt. I'm telling you, I don't know. Sylvia tried to stand up and run away, but Jody grabbed her and demanded to see her purchase history. It seemed like she couldn't resist anymore. Then, Sylvia, resigned, threw the smartphone screen showing the purchase history towards me. I knew it. The screen displayed the record of a pregnancy test kit purchased as a prank. It was clear evidence of what Sylvia had done. Unable to hide it any longer, Sylvia confessed everything. Yes, I did it all. From the start, I couldn't stand Sherry acting all high and mighty after suddenly showing up. So, when I found out about Madeline's irregular periods, I just thought I'd mess with her a little. It was just a joke. Why are you all ganging up on me and complaining? Sylvia's confession revealed her selfish motives. The fact that I had contributed to Custom Tailor's sales and turned the business around. Moreover, through sales activities, I had become friendly with the neighbors and gained more acquaintances. From Sylvia's perspective, it seemed she didn't like that I was getting along better with everyone than she was. Unlike me, who always takes action and tries to interact with people, Sylvia had a passive personality. She had beautiful features and was recognized as a beauty by everyone. That's why Sylvia, who took pride in it, believed that others should always approach her first. She was friendly to those who did something for her, but cold to those who didn't do anything in particular. I think that's where the difference in our popularity stemmed from. What the heck? Just because you're a little good at sales, you're getting carried away. I bet you just asked people for favors, sucked up to them, and got them to praise you. Everyone keeps going on about Sherry, even though you're uglier than me. Hey, how can you say that to Sherry? Sherry has been working hard for our store, desperately coming up with new products and finding sales leads, sacrificing even her sleep. What have you been doing in the meantime? It's all right, Daryl, that's enough. I was furious at Sylvia's words, but this was in front of Madeline. I didn't want to show her a scene of us fighting with foul language. Perhaps sensing that, Daryl suppressed his anger and looked towards the front door. We've called the police too, so we absolutely won't forgive you. There's no need to make such a big deal out of it. Can't you take a joke? I can't believe this. Sylvia, who was taken away by Daryl, was being questioned by the police officer who had rushed over after Daryl's call, while loudly complaining. The officer was different from the one at the hospital, but it seemed like he had been briefed well and had a general grasp of the situation. Perhaps Sylvia was a little intimidated in front of the officer, or maybe she judged that it was better to tell the truth without hiding anything in order to be released quickly, but she honestly admitted the facts. Her tone was very light. Until the very end. It was just meant to be a little joke. It was a joke, so there's no need to apologize. She kept appealing to the officer. Seeing this, my parents-in-law kept apologizing to Madeline and me over and over again. It wasn't my parents-in-law's fault, but no matter how much we told them to stop, they wouldn't listen at all. While we were arguing back and forth, it seemed Sylvia had been released and came back to us. I went through hell. I really can't believe this. Aren't you going to apologize to Madeline and Sherry? That's right. You shameless woman. Do you have any idea how much you hurt Madeline? Huh? I keep telling you. It was just a joke. How many times do I have to say it for you to understand? Sylvia said mockingly, but in the end, there was not a single word of apology. Daryl, who had finished talking to the officer, returned to me with a frustrated look on his face. Judging from his demeanor, I could tell the result was not good. The police officer seemed disappointed too, but he said this case isn't one where an arrest can be made. He did give a stern warning, but it didn't seem like she was willing to listen. I see. I guess that's how it is. Sylvia, who had gotten off with just a warning, was triumphantly complaining. She didn't seem to care at all that she had turned my parents-in-law, me, Daryl, and Madeline against her. I had thought we could at least teach her a little lesson, but in the end, my revenge didn't go well, and I was left just feeling bitter. The next few days, I tried to avoid running into Sylvia as much as possible for Madeline's sake, but I couldn't come to terms with the situation. My in-laws kept apologizing to Madeline and me as always, but that wasn't the point. Why should we, who had done nothing wrong, have to be considerate and feel uncomfortable in our own home? Moreover, Sylvia had started finding fault with me and harassing me at the storefront too. Fortunately, it hadn't escalated thanks to Sue's stern glares, but the resentment was still building up. I couldn't put Madeline at ease here. Having come to that conclusion, I told Daryl that I wanted us to move out of my in-laws' place and build a house for the three of us. Back when Custom Tailor was struggling, there were times I didn't receive a proper salary, so I hadn't been able to save up, but in this rural town, rental properties didn't exist. If we wanted to live here, we needed to build a house. I knew it would be tough, but in order to somehow make it happen, I desperately focused on sales and online marketing. Then, a few months later, just as we were slowly building up funds, Sylvia suddenly abandoned everything, including her job, and casually left home one day. Apparently, the reason was that she had found her destined love. Furious at her utterly selfish reason, my in-laws' anger exploded. After calling her numerous times, when Sylvia finally answered, Jody declared, "You're disowned." He then roughly hung up the phone. A whole year had quickly passed since Sylvia left, and we had been considering moving out of my in-laws' place, but with Sylvia's sudden disappearance, we were still living with them. Business was still going great, and every day was consumed by work. I had almost completely forgotten about Sylvia's existence. Then, one evening, the house phone rang. Wondering who it could be at this hour, I watched as Jody, who was nearby, answered the call. Picking up the receiver, Jody let out a big sigh and furrowed his brow. "Hey! The house is gone! What's going on?" Hearing the familiar loud voice leaking out from the phone, Daryl and I, who were there, exchanged surprised looks. We had never dreamed that Sylvia would call. But Jody had a calm demeanor, as if he had known a call would come someday. "We sold the house a long time ago." "Huh? I never heard about that. Tell me where you moved." "Why would I tell you? You're no longer a part of our lives." In fact, about 6 months after Sylvia left, we had moved to the city. It was my in-laws who had suggested it. I didn't know the full circumstances, but there was no way someone with Sylvia's personality could live harmoniously with a man. My in-laws had been wary that someday, Sylvia would be kicked out and come back in a pinch. "What are you saying? The store! You have the store, don't you? You'll be in trouble if I don't take it over for you. I haven't forgiven you for calling Custom Tailor's work outdated and a garbage business." I'd rather close the store than have you take over. Jody was so enraged, like I had never seen before. Just like Daryl, he was usually gentle, and I had rarely seen him angry. For Jody to raise his voice this much, it must be quite serious. Still, I was surprised to hear that she had declared custom tailor's work to be an outdated garbage business in the past. Thinking about how my in-laws had forgiven such a worthless daughter and had continued on without abandoning her all this time, I couldn't hold back my tears. I'll say it one more time. You're disowned. Don't ever show your face in front of us again. Wait a minute. I'm in a really tough spot right now. Money. I need money. Come on, Dad, help me out. Before Sylvia could finish talking, Jody had hung up the phone, so I couldn't hear any more of her words after that. I could tell she had tried to win him over with tears at the end, but I wasn't sure how that pleading voice sounded to Jody. Jody's back after hanging up the phone was indescribably lonely, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Daryl gently patted my shoulder as I stood there at a loss for words. Far away from our hometown where the store used to be, we had no idea what became of Sylvia and were once again caught up in our busy daily lives. However, a few months later, while minding the store with Sue, a couple who were acquaintances of my in-laws from far away came to visit. This couple had continued to buy our products back when the store was on the verge of closing down. They had been purchasing through mail order for a while, but they had apparently come to see us while on a trip. And it was from this couple that I heard about Sylvia's current situation. It seemed that when Sylvia found out she had lost her house, she went around approaching anyone she could find in the neighborhood. Since it was a small rural area, Sylvia's misdeeds were already known to all the residents, and far from lending a helping hand, there was not a single person who even offered her kind words. A shameless woman who had hurt a girl of marriageable age with an unethical prank and remained defiant even to the police. She was apparently living her days with people talking behind her back. Even for Sylvia, living in that small town with no allies must have been uncomfortable. And as for Sylvia's partner, about whom we hadn't known the details, it turned out to be a man from the bar she frequented. Sylvia had become infatuated with a man at a certain bar a few train stations away from her hometown. Confident in her own beauty, Sylvia had no doubt that the man at the bar was in love with her. To make the barman even more crazy about her, she had poured in large sums of money and even used up all her savings. After leaving home, she had apparently been frequenting the bar, barely working and accumulating debt. But such a lifestyle couldn't continue forever, and when she reached a point where she couldn't repay her debts or borrow more money, she seemed to have sought help from the man she was so invested in. The man himself was questionable, but that was her own fault. After being swiftly dumped by a woman who was only beautiful and had recklessly created debt, she was apparently struggling to repay her loans without even receiving help. With no place to live, Sylvia was forced to live on the streets for a while. However, the residents, thinking it would be troublesome if she suddenly turned up dead after being on the streets for a long time, had Sylvia live in a dilapidated house with a hole in the roof that could hardly be called clean. And now, even in her hardship, unable to honestly work, Sylvia was apparently clutching her remaining money, riding the train, and trying to seduce any man who looked wealthy. And using the pregnancy test that would absolutely show a positive result, which she had given to Madeline, she was reportedly informing her numerous partners with whom she had physical relations that she was pregnant and demanding marriage or child support payments. I was astounded that she was still targeting rich men at this point, but apparently, that strategy had yet to succeed, and she was often seen returning to the rundown house in her hometown, exhausted. The area around her hometown was by no means urban, so Sylvia's bad reputation had spread in no time. There was a terrible woman, beautiful but threatening pregnancy to demand marriage and child support. As such rumors spread, it had apparently become difficult for her to even seduce men recently. Even when she occasionally succeeded in bringing a man home, she would end up having her money taken and only wearing herself down, according to the couple who visited the store. Having lost a home to return to and unable to maintain the beauty she had absolute confidence in, Sylvia's state must be quite unseemly. Having achieved revenge in an unexpected way, I felt a little lighter in my heart. It was a shame I couldn't see it with my own eyes, but I couldn't even spare the time to go see how Sylvia was doing now. She really is a hopeless child as always, causing trouble for everyone. Sue. Although she had declared Sylvia disowned, just like Jody, the inherently kind Sue seemed to be pained by Sylvia's current situation. She also seemed concerned about causing trouble for the former neighborhood residents, but the couple who visited the store laughed, saying it made for a good topic of conversation. After chatting for a bit, they purchased a few new products and left. Changing the subject, the reason my in-laws had suggested moving was that I had mentioned our past efforts to save up funds to move out of their house to avoid Sylvia. I had meant it as a casual conversation, but my in-laws said they would both contribute money to build a new home on a new piece of land. They had apparently also been considering relocating to a more convenient location for a long time and had been saving up. Thanks to that, we were able to build a better house than expected, with a factory next to the store-cum house. The craftsmen were all people who had fallen for my in-laws' character after overcoming the difficult times together, so they followed us to the distant new location. Recently, young apprentices who have been inspired by the quality of the products here have started joining us, saying they want to learn the techniques, and our whole family has begun working on passing down the tradition. There may still be a long way to go, but I feel a strong sense of fulfillment in this work. Ever since Madeline stopped the irregular lifestyle that the doctor had warned her about, perhaps because she has no stress, her menstrual cycle has returned to normal, and she seems to be getting along well with the friends she made at her new school. Moreover, Madeline has recently developed a strong interest in fashion and has started thinking about creating original designs for clothes, scarves, and such. Her design approach from a perspective that we don't have is full of new discoveries. Every day is so busy that I have no time to rest, but I felt fulfilled. I want to work hard to further expand the company and spread the appeal of custom tailor to many more people.